Good evening, everybody. Seeing a quorum of the board present, I call the meeting of Tuesday, June 4th, 2024 to order. 6:33 right now. To my left is select board members, Mr. Lugito, Ms. Deborah Roberts. To my right, I recognize Vice Chair Scott Carrera and select board member Joe McCrisky, as well as town manager Tom Coulter, and Gilda Pereira is here as well. Please join me if you're able in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Rise if you're able. Thank you. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all so much. Our agenda does not include any select board comments or public comments, but I will ask the members of the board, the town manager, if there's anybody who has any comments they'd like to make before we begin the meeting. Mr. McCrisky.
Guess we know who will have the squeaky mic tonight. Mr. Chair, I apologize. And I know you did not have select board comments on the agenda tonight, but I did have a couple that should have been brought up at the last meeting, and I chose not to. It just wasn't the time. But a couple things. Thank you. That's service. Now people can hear me. Some might not like it, but they're going to. So a couple of comments regarding Route 139. This is an issue that has been out there for years, probably 15 years or better. And we need, Mr. Chair, and I've consulted with both the water and sewer department head and the town engineer to assure my comments were correct and factually based. Those of you who will know, I think the only one, Lou and Scott have been on the issues many other times with me. But this is like Stoughton's big dig. This predates the hole in the ground. And this is a state road that the state had control over, if we all remember, for just a quick background. This is the road that the state decided when Governor Cellucci needed money for the big dig. They scaled down this project, and they took gravel. They put up about a 35 to 40 foot hill right on 139. How much? A what? They call it a cell. Oh, all right. Yeah, it was a cell. It was a cell. It was a steel. They just came in and did it. So, but evidently the road was packed up. The road did sink in like they thought it would. So they chopped off the top layer of gravel, and they paved the road over, and it was great for about a year until it started settling again. Here we are now, 15 years forward. The road still consistently sinks, and I'm told there's at least 1.5 to 2 feet of asphalt in a couple of areas that have been used to get it back up to level. But the bigger issue, where the state has been ignoring the project, we had, I believe, 5 years ago, another presentation, but we haven't heard anything about what they're going to do. Our water line, our main water line to North Stoughton, runs over the roadway along the sidewalk and is exposed. Let's just say there's many, many circumstances where that road, that line could be, by mistake or, or whatever, could be damaged. Or if it breaks due to the road settling, we have the potential to lose all water for that whole section of town. All right, now, this isn't the town of Stoughton, folks, just so when Facebook blows up. This isn't the town of Stoughton's responsibility. It's Mass Highway, the state of Massachusetts, Mass Highway, District 5. So I think that we have to take all actions through our town government, and I will make a motion in a moment, to assure that our sewer line is, of the highest integrity. It is bending, but I'm told by the sewer superintendent that he doesn't think it'll break. But again, that's not, it won't break. He doesn't think it will break. And we know the exposure. All it takes is a serious car collision to hit that line. It becomes ruptured, and we have a whole section of town without water. It's long overdue. The Commonwealth has stuck it to Stoughton in some areas in the past, similar to this. We have intersections that remain unaddressed. We have rail lines that remain unaddressed. We have, numerous road issues that we do on our own. So with this one, Mr. Chair, we need to make sure that that sewer line and that water line is maintained to the highest level of integrity. And the roadway, again. So I would ask that we use any means that, and I would put this in the form of a motion, I hope somebody will second it, that the select board authorized the town manager, town engineer, and the water and sewer commissioner to write a letter to Mass Highway and our delegation at the State House, and for appropriate people to come before our board and tell us what's the story with this project. All right, this is not, and I can't think of another community, unless it's an intentional use that they've put over a road, that has this. And I'm concerned for our infrastructure, and it's not ours. Secondly, in the area of Mass Highway District 5, I've received, and I've seen this with my own two eyes, but I've received a couple calls regarding Dykeman Way coming from Avon to Stoughton. I put this in the form of an email as well. And what happened was Mass Highway decided Dykeman Way coming into Stoughton is 2 lanes. They decided, in their infinite wisdom, that they needed a left turn dedicated lane to our Central Street, the old Central Street, leading down into the town of Avon. So what happens, though, Mr. Chairman, is when you're in the right lane coming up, somebody sees that left lane that's a dedicated turn lane, they see it open, and it becomes a high-speed lane, and they zip up. A Stoughton resident was given a ticket for failing to yield. Well, the Stoughton resident couldn't prevent what happened. This was the other vehicle. Now, there's a law that says if you're merging, you have to merge, if you're in the right lane, you have to, merge to traffic as well. And the person was cited. Now, I don't know the details of it, but I find it really hard to believe, and I think it's unfathomable, that a Stoughton resident got a ticket because some person was driving faster than the speed limit in an unauthorized lane and cut this person off. So if Mass Highway causes the problem, Mass Highway needs to come down and tell us how they're going to fix it now. So this was a haphazard thing. They put the lane in. If they got to do that on the other side of a lane, they should block it off so that car has nowhere to go. So Mass Highway, again, has created this problem for our town and our residents and other motorists. So with that, I think that in the form of motion, Mr. Chair, I'll add that we reach out to Mass Highway and our State House delegation to address Dykeman Way, the dedicated left turn lane coming from Avon to Stoughton at Central Street, and that we have them address the water and the sewer line and the road condition of Pleasant Street from Turnpike Street, where it merges in from Turnpike Street to Page Street. And I did, like I said, I did speak with the town engineer. I spoke with the Water and Sewer Commissioner. They're expecting this motion tonight. And I would ask for a second, and if anybody wants to discuss it further.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is, though it's not on the agenda, I want to follow through with a vote right now, but I will put it again on our consent if it passes. Put it on again on our next scheduled meeting in the consent agenda, just to validate this vote.
But I hope we can get the letter drafted and out as well.
I don't think that we have to do one before we do the other. I think so long as we.
All right. Well, I would like to look into that too, Mr. Chairman, because I know the open meeting law has provisions in it for situations like this, but I believe it says if it could be foreseen, and it wasn't foreseen. It's not like this is something I'm bringing up. So I'd like, if I'm wrong, somebody wants to learn, teach me about it.
Well, I'm comfortable moving forward with the vote. I just think that we'll add it to the next agenda as well, just to
well, that's what I'm saying. I think this one, though, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't want to see the letter sit. I'd like to see the letter sent out. If I have to, I would ask through you to council, you check with council and see if it has to be held up. Sure. If it has to, I'm okay with that. If not, I'd like it out there because, I'm just tired, Mr. Chairman. I'm tired of people that are supposed to step up to the plate and exercise their due diligence in their position. And it seems sometimes if it's Stoughton, it's not a priority. And I'm really sick and tired of it. I really am. So that's it. I will shut up on that one.
Mr. Carrera, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a short one. Joe, this goes back to 98. I was on Concom. I had the meeting with the Mass DOT, the big schwoo-wah in that room there. And they said, we're going to take this cell, we're going to put it up there, it's going to crush. We do it in Missouri, it happens all the time. And I says, ain't going to work. And I was just a little guy with all these engineers, and I flipped a piece of paper on the table. I says, why don't you guys all sign it so I can come back and talk to you later? I says, because you see this, you ever get a dollar sponge from the bank, right? I put it in a dish, and I put water at one end and a little bit in the other, and you watch it come up uneven. I go, that's how that road acts. I go, you have nothing to control anything. There's no equalizer pipes for that swamp to go back and forth. All it's going to do is push and deflect. You know what they said to me? And I was the vice chairman at the time on Concom. They said, this job's bigger than you. And it is. It's a big mess. It was a big mess then. And when Jim Miller was a town engineer and I was driving by there to go to my garage every day, I says, that cell's moving. No, it's not. They went up and shot it. It was 2.5 feet to the right because it went to the ledge and then it slid. It has nowhere to go. It went the easiest way. It's what happens in the world. That was the biggest joke, and they said they saved money. It was a $9 million project, and they got 6.9 for doing it. What a waste.
Of course. We have a motion and a second. So the motion is to, I guess, produce 2 letters, one regarding the sewer on Pleasant Street between Turnpike and Page, and the second is with regard to, is it Dykeman Way?
Dykeman Way at Central Street.
Yeah.
Does it have to be 2 letters because it's going to the same person? You know,
Well,
actually, if that's the case, Mr. Chair, it'd actually be 4 letters. We have 2 representatives, a senator, and District 5.
Okay, regarding these 2 issues.
Yeah.
All in
4
favor?
letters.
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Ayes have it, and we will, I'll add this to the agenda again and confer with town council to make sure that we can produce this letter swiftly. If not, then I'll let you know.
Okay. Second one's very quick, just a reading, Mr. Chair, is to advise our Stoughton seniors. The Stoughton Council on Aging newsletter for June 2024 has in it, and I think it would be helpful because through you to the town manager, of a great job for getting notices out on the special election coming up. We all know the importance of this election, and but they do have rides for the Stoughton special election Tuesday, June 11th at 12:30 p.m. The Stoughton Council on Aging is offering free rides to your polling place location at 12:30 p.m. Call now for your ride to the polls. So if you need to, you can contact the Stoughton Council on Aging at 781-344-8882. Again, that is 781-344-8882. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, and Gilda has been good enough to put up an image. I've been asked by our friends at the Stoughton Cooperative Bank, as they say, Stoughton's only hometown bank, that they are having a block party, and it is open to all Stoughton residents, and it'll be on June 22nd from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's Saturday at their location up on the higher end. I forget the number. I can't see it there. 950? Okay, 950 Park Street. So the Stoughton Cooperative Bank has always been a good friend of Stoughton and has had similar events like this, always takes place in our Stoughton Day, 4th of July. I mean, they're always a part of it. So I was asked if I would make that comment on their behalf. My job is done, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Roberts.
Through you to Mr. Coulter. This is regarding New England Sinai Hospital. Do you have any additional insight to the plans for the use of that building? I heard some informal information, and I just wanted you to verify. Have you heard anything?
They are not keeping any of the stakeholder groups, including the town, directly informed. We've attended their information sessions that are short on information, and they don't respond to questions. The only source of information I have is from the State House, And the rumor, and that's all it is a rumor, is that they're negotiating with 2 downtown Boston hospitals regarding the potential for turning that site into a South Shore surgical ward. I don't know the value of that information, but Pam and I have both called the president of Sinai Hospital seeking additional information, and all we get are press releases that tell us very little. We do have an assurance from the state that there is no plan to turn that into a shelter. I don't know if that's consistent with what you're hearing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coulter. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? We'll move on to the first order of business, the second order of business, which is the fiscal 23 audit review presentation. This is going to be presented by our auditors at Powers and Sullivan, and I'm guessing Biz probably will join us as well. Sir, I might mispronounce your last name. I apologize. I'm not sure if I should even take a stab, but I'm going to say Todd Jurczyk. What was it? How is it pronounced? Jurczyk. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. Remind people that we have we started adding on in our agenda package a executive summary that provides people with some information about what each one of these items is. I'm just going to read briefly from that for this. It's a presentation for the fiscal 23 audit closeout by the independent auditor, Todd, you just told me, Jurczyk, from Power and Sullivan LLC. Presentation will cover the audit of the town of Stoughton's fiscal year 23 financial statements, comments, and recommendations.
We're live? Okay. How's that? Are we picking up my audio? A little closer? There we go. Right like this. Okay. Well, I just want to extend my sincere thanks to the board and to Tom and Biz for extending the invitation for me to come out and present. As you just stated, I am the engagement partner on the audit of the town's financial statements. We also take a look at how the town, and when I use the word town, I know some places it's a little different, but it's all encompassing, including the school department. Okay, it is a department of the town. We look at how the town as a whole complied with requirements relative to federal grant expenditures and federal grant requirements. Because the town, pretty much as long as I've been involved with this audit, I believe my firm picked the audit up in either FY 17 or 18. Consistently, you've expended greater than $750,000 of federal awards. So under the federal guidance, we have to, following prescribed formula by the federal government, we have to go through and do a risk analysis of your federal spending by program and determine what program or programs we need to audit every year. And then along the way, we go through and we also produce a letter of recommendations, commonly referred to as the management letter, which you have in front of you. So that's sort of the quick summary of what it is that my firm produces. The financial statements themselves, and then the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, that's information that comes out of the town's accounting system. Okay, we don't create the financial statements. Everything from cash as stated in the financial statements to capital assets, your net OPEB liability, so on and so forth. Not all that resides within the town's munis accounting system. That's sort of set up to comply with statutory guidance under Massachusetts general law. But the other gap items, net OPEB liability, net pension liability, Biz's office and Paula's office work with various actuaries to obtain the necessary information to calculate those what I call gap numbers on an annual basis. The only thing that I own is the audit opinions. Okay, That's pretty much it. So how do I get to, at the end of the day, my ultimate goal is to present unqualified audit opinions to all of my clients. Sometimes I don't get to do that. Most of the time I do. That's the highest level of audit opinion that an auditor could issue. Means your financial statements are free of material misstatement. Your system of internal controls. In other words, how do the numbers come together? How does it get formulated? It's free of any breakdowns in the internal controls, and if there were, it would be highlighted by an issuance of either a material weakness comment or a significant deficiency in internal controls. What my team does every year is we pretty much beat up the balance sheet. We'll go through and look at the cash recs, definitely at year end, but occasionally we will pick some interim periods just to see how things are going. We look at your receivables, and then anything that's compiled offline, of course, we scrutinize that, especially the pension liabilities and OPEB. We are looking at invoices. Not everyone, obviously. We're looking at cash receipts along the way. Journal entries that get posted to adjust certain accounts one way or the other. And all this is done, it's a risk-based approach. We look at it after we gain an understanding of internal controls. We sit back and kind of say, all right, what's the riskiest areas that could either lead us to render a false audit opinion, or areas that might be prone to just misstatement by the nature of it. You don't see that a lot in the governmental sector as you might in the public side of the world, just because of the nature of it. Most of your revenues on a day-to-day basis, especially from tax receipts, it doesn't hit your revenue right away. It sits as a receivable when you commit the bill, and then it's offset by a deferred liability. And then as cash receipts come into the system, that's when it hits the bottom line. Plus, there's generally not an incentive to increase there's no earnings per share that you have to worry about. So again, we don't look at every invoice, don't look at every receipt, but we do test along the way. If the town accountant's office is telling us that they've need to capitalize $1 million of capital expenditures, we sample some of that stuff. We look at it. So I guess long-winded way of at the end of the day, we have not issued any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So that means at an interim period, now the prior town accountant obviously is not here right now, so where these financial statements were presented to you, but that could give this board some sort of solace that any financial related decisions you may or may not have made as a result of information being presented to you throughout the course of the fiscal year or fiscal years, that you probably arrived at a good conclusion based on solid information. So, as my father liked to say, you can sleep easily at night. It won't keep you awake at night. So, again, there are 3 bound booklets in front of you. One's the thicker one is the financial statements themselves. There's another thin report relative to the federal expenditure awards, and then another, in comparison, thinner report for the management letter. I'll just touch upon briefly the schedule of expenditure of federal awards. There's really not a lot of earth-shattering news here. All the opinions, again, were unqualified opinions. There were no audit findings. That means that management pretty much complied with what they needed to comply from a program management standpoint. The town for FY23 expended about $5.2 million across the board, and about $4.2 million of that related to the school department, mainly in the areas of school lunch, special education, ESSER, and Title I, I believe, were the big school line items. And as far as what we audited, we were required this year to take a look at the special education grant cluster. Not sure where we're going to be looking at in '24. We haven't cracked the books yet on '24 planning, but we will shortly. And I guess before I go further too, if we ever encounter anything of material concern, I'd be calling. First, I'd be mentioning it to Biz. Then I'd probably be walking into Tom's office to say, "Okay, can you get me a date in front of the board?" We wouldn't be waiting for the reports to get issued. So if you don't see me except for once a year, it's a good thing generally. So that's the CFA. As far as your basic financial statements, there's actually multiple financial statements that are presented. And technically, the audit firm is issuing multiple opinions as opposed to a commercial entity where it's just one set of financial statements and one opinion. And each of those financial statements has different bases of accounting in accordance with generally accepted governmental accounting standards. The main one that I like to point most boards and committees to is the budget to actual schedule. Whether you want to follow along, it's on page 66. Page 66. And again, this is where, certainly where your finance committee lives and breathes. If it's not daily, it's quite frequently. But this is pretty much a result of what's been presented to town meeting during the year to set the initial budget, and then any amendments to that initial budget to arrive at the final estimated amounts, and then it just compares what you had anticipated spending and anticipated collecting, and compares it to actual. On the revenue side for '23, the town did well. You actually your actuals exceeded estimates by about $2 million. Most of that was due to significantly higher than anticipated investment income. And that's something we had been seeing across our client base during the '23 audit cycle. Now, that's kind of out of your control. That's just the result of economic conditions forcing more opportunities to earn a higher rate of return on funds invested at the bank level in CDs and whatnot. On the expenditure side, again, you anticipated spending about $122.9 million, and between your actual expenditures and any purchase orders or other commitments that were carried forward into '24 and then subsequently paid most likely by the end of the first quarter of '24, you still had a turn back of appropriations of about $4.4 million. Now, that actually puts you in a good spot when you consider the fact that the town had anticipated spending about $4.9 million, probably a better word to use, utilizing about $4.9 million of free cash during FY23. So you set your budget, anticipating taking a good chunk of money out of your back pocket to fund operations, but your actual results surpass that. So at the end of the day, your general fund actually increased its fund balance by about $1.5 million, and this is strictly on the statutory basis. So it's what when you meet to set the tax rate, and usually in the wintertime, sometime it's based on these numbers. This is what DOR looks at when it certifies the tax rate. And at the end of the fiscal year, when it's going through the process of certifying free cash, this is the starting point. This is where you live and breathe every day. And these are probably most of these numbers should not be too much of a surprise to most of you folks. So now this is different. This general fund presentation is a little different The general fund also appears on pages 18 and 20. Again, like I said, a different basis of accounting. This is starting to get into the the gap world, generally accepted accounting principles. The general fund column in here includes your stabilization fund or funds. Forgive me offhand, I forget if you have multiple stabilization funds out here or not, but regardless of the count, any stabilization fund would be included in your general fund. And depending on the purpose of the stabilization fund, it's either considered as unassigned fund balance or it could be committed or restricted depending on any restrictions on the enabling legislation or town meeting votes when the fund was initially set up. So this set of financial statements, this is what's generally in the industry is referred to as a fund-based financial. It's pretty much budgetary basis with some minor adjustments for the town will go and look out, and this is in accordance with GAAP. They'll look out into the first quarter of that subsequent fiscal year, usually about 60 days out, and they'll analyze tax receipt collections to say, okay, what came in this 60-day period that was related to receivables that were outstanding at June 30th of the end of the fiscal year. There could be some invoices that were outstanding that didn't make that final warrant for whatever reason. Stuff happens. Usually the town accountants or city auditors will go back and they will accrue that. They will recognize the payable. They'll say, as if to say, okay, the cash didn't get paid to the vendor, but this is an expense that was related to the year end that I'm reporting on. There's not too much strangeness in this basis. Again, it's I like to call it modified cash, almost cash, but not quite. And then there is so one note I do want to point out while we're on this page before we go further. At the end of 23, your unassigned fund balance was about $18.8 million, which represents about 15% of your fiscal year 23 general fund gap-based expenditures. That's a healthy position to be in. It's been a few months since I've actually looked at the current metrics that a lot of rating agencies are using when they go to rate municipal debt. But I know the last time I looked, it was any time you're above 10, in that 10 to 20% range, it's a good neighborhood. And based on what I've seen lately, you're probably trending towards the higher end of that tier. So that's my last note on that. There is another note, but I'll circle back to it in a minute. Don't need that one. The next set of financial statements I want to refer you to is your statement of net positions. It starts on page 15 and it goes to 16 and 17. This basis of accounting, it's as if any of you own your own business or have been involved with the corporate finance world, or you're the well-informed investor, this is going to be as close as you're ever going to get on a governmental financial statement to public company accounting. I don't want to put any percentages as far as, are they 70% of the way there? Is it 90 or, but it's as close as you're going to get. This is about as far as removed from day-to-day operations, that doesn't matter what town, any town accountant or city auditor or treasurer is going to encounter. This is a full GAAP-based financials. It builds upon the other statements we just walked through, and then it adds on your net pension liability. It adds on your net other post-employment benefit liability, adds on your fixed assets, adds on your long-term debt. At the end of fiscal year 23, and this is pretty much going to be a key metric, your unrestricted net position on the governmental activities. This is excluding your, referred to as business type. Excludes the enterprise funds. Okay? Just your governmental activities was in an unrestricted net position of about $153 million, $153 million, $154 million. What caused that? The biggest contributing factor is going to be your net OPEB liability of about $136.7 million and your net pension liability of about $41.5 million. On your pension piece, you are making the annual required contribution as you are, as the town, as any city or town in the Commonwealth is required to do. You're making it to Norfolk County. I didn't do this analysis, but you're essentially making the minimum payment on a credit card bill that's been carrying a balance since 2000. You're making your payment, you're legal compliance, no one's going to come after you, but you're still playing the catch-up game there. Most of this liability measurement, the number comes from the retirement system itself. They hire an actuary that goes through every year. The actuary is consistently doing this all throughout the year pretty much. The actuary builds the number to say, okay, this is what the town of Stoughton or the city of Quincy or the city of Boston needs to contribute to the respective pension system. That's in accordance with PARAC. Then they take that study and they come through and revise it to GASB standards. And whatever the final report that the actuary produces then gets audited by the auditor of the Norfolk County Retirement System. I forget who the current auditor is, but it's not my firm. But it is audited. The retirement system makes its audit publicly available, so we're able to rely a little bit on their opinion. There's not too much, other than what your local representative to that board might be doing to influence decision-making in terms of actuarial assumptions that drive a large part of the liability. There's not much day-to-day control that the town has on this. I forget how many reps you have over there. Generally, it's only one per community if Norfolk follows the trend in other communities. But it's their board sets the discount rate. They've set the term that your liability is going to be amortized and when you're going to finally pay it. The discount rate for FY23 was about 7.75%, probably a little bit high. So who knows? I don't know where the board's going to go in the future. But the more that they start to ratchet that investment rate of return downward, which is where I've been seeing a lot of systems go over the past 5-6 years. Some are getting approaching 7%. That liability could increase, assuming there's no other changes in actuarial assumptions that they utilize. The net OPEB liability, that's one that's more under the town's control. The town hires the actuary, works with them to develop consistent actuarial assumptions that then drive into this calculation. The first step that the actuary does is they determine the total OPEB liability. What's the total amount owed if you had to pay everyone out for the post-employment benefits? Then the next step is to say, okay, what is the town set aside in a trust to pay for these benefits at some point in the future? Your fund balance in the trust right now is about just shy of $400,000 at the end of June 30th of 23. Okay. again, I can only give advice. The decision making is vests with everyone else in this room except me. So, the only thing I will say is the more that it, and this is just conversations I've had with actuaries and just having been involved with auditing this type of liability for about 10 years now. The more community can set aside into an OPEB trust, the more beneficial it's probably going to be. The more you can assert to the actuary that, hey, we've adopted a funding schedule to deal with this OPEB, you might be able to gain some higher investment rate of return assumptions, which could, and again, it's all hypothetical. The actuary would have to do the calculations of pro forma analysis for you to figure out where the liability might be if you were to invest X amount a year. But you have a little more control over this liability if you want to drive it downward. But how the investment markets fare on an actual basis, that's out of everybody's control. But a little more control falls back to the town and town meeting and whether or not you want to fund it or not. My only concern with any of this is whether the accounting is done appropriately and all the required financial statement disclosures in the back of the report are accurate and proper. So I think that was pretty much it on the financials. Your enterprise funds as a whole increased its fund balance by about $2.5 million. Most of that was the result of some capital grants. You received some capital grant funding from MWRA, and then there was some application of ARPA funding on some projects during the course of FY23. If you really want to know how a good indicator of any of your 5 enterprise funds are doing, what I like to point people to is a statement of cash flows on page 24. Towards the top of the page, there's a line for net cash from operating activities. And 4 out of the 5 categories, you're just from operations alone, you're generating a positive cash return. Looks like there was one fund that actually had an outflow, but it's looking like it was anticipated to some degree because there was a transfer of funding in from another fund to help shore that operation up a little bit. So that's it on the numbers themselves. I can go further on this.
Actually, it might be good if people ask maybe some questions that helped lead the discussion. I just want to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to make sure that we stay within the scope of your responsibilities here. We don't ask questions outside of that.
Yep.
And I just want to make clear that as an auditor, your primary role is not to offer recommendations or say this is good or this is bad or you're heading the wrong direction here. You ought to do more of this, but it's simply to examine our financial statements. You're looking specifically for any sort of deficiencies in internal controls, and your role is to examine our processes to make sure that we're accounting correctly, and that also there aren't these internal controls that might cause issues. So you spot check things and so forth, and then you're working to help get our financial statement, ensure that our financial statements are in line with, in my world, I'm familiar with GAAP. I know that the government accounting has a slightly different acronym, right? It's GSA, is it?
Over the past few years, they've just been referred to as GASB statements, Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
Thanks. So, but that there's a standard for accounting that you are ensuring that we're following, and so that's the scope of your work.
That's exactly it. It's like, as I said, it's the financial statements that are presented in front of you. That's what we're engaged to do. And again, our approach is a risk-based approach.
Perfect. And the last thing I just want to mention is that the management letter, as I interpret it, doesn't say on there, on the letter itself, but this is an unqualified opinion, correct?
Oh, yeah. I may have mentioned earlier in the presentation. If not, I apologize. But yeah, all of the audit opinions are unqualified. So it's the A++, okay? Your financial statements are well presented. There are no material weaknesses in internal control. There are no significant deficiencies in internal control. So it's, again, plus. We did produce a management letter. They're not egregious sins.
You can always do things a
But
little better.
it's other matters type thing. Other matters for, kind of tightening the ship, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. So in the scope of their duties, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Not on this section.
Perfect. Mr. Gito, any questions? Do you have any questions? All yours.
Thank you. The OPEB deficit that we have, how does it compare with the other 350 communities in the state?
I can only speak to the communities that I'm familiar with from an audit client. We haven't done a statewide analysis to benchmark. I believe the Commonwealth did that maybe 4 years ago, three to 4 years ago, and it's been a while since I looked at that report. You're at the higher end. You're at the higher end. Can I say you're in the top 20% of the largest liabilities? That I can't speak to. But
So that's not a good thing.
I think we might be outside the scope of what your duties are with regard to our financial statements.
Exactly. I mean,
this sort of judgment is something we would have a separate
yeah,
consultation for.
and it's it's all in scope too with the financial statements themselves as a whole. There's only one community. I think we're down to one community. For a while, there were three that were fully funded for OPEB. I think now we're down to just one. Yeah, it's a scary number. But it's something that the town has some sort of managerial control to some extent. Again, there's actuarial assumptions that if the town's interested in trying to rein that in, I'd work with the town's actuary to sort of solidify and say, this is where we think we're going in terms of throwing cash at it. How does this help us on some of the assumptions that they're applying? The actuary is going to be the better one to give you that analysis. Sure.
Any other questions? Mr. McCrisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, but a comment is that I don't know how many of these I have sitting in my drawer, and they didn't have the results that this has. There was past ones that had things that were brought up from previous years that hadn't been fixed, things that were identified, and they said it hasn't been done yet. And just browsing through this, I just got tonight and online, it's a joy. It's actually, it's nice to see us moving forward. I don't think anybody sitting here in the last 9 years has had a hearing like this, a presentation where we got the opportunity, right? So I do want to say thank you to our town manager and his financial team because this is here. And there's been times, I only speak for myself, that I wondered why we didn't get these. It should be a normal part of business. And then I was told just recently, no, this should be coming forward and telling you about it. So thank you, Rose, for your presentation. Biz, thank you for the job you've been doing since you've been here. It has been noticeable. And in my opinion, a breath of fresh air. So it's a great thing. So town manager, through you and your staff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks. Vice Chair Carrera.
To you, sir, I appreciate this. I see this coming from my own accountant, so I understand it.
Okay.
But for the most thing, you're right. I sat on finance for 9 years, and that one page is the Bible, and that's where everything derives from. So if your numbers are right,
Exactly.
good. And I rely on Mr. Coulter to make sure that the pick is good and it works. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
So if we have no further questions, I thank you very much, and thank you for coming before the board and helping us understand this. But also, I know that the work that you do is tiring, and is I know there's a lot of long hours in this.
Yep.
It's not necessarily the most exciting work, so it can be very difficult and challenging in a variety of ways. But the importance of it for transparent government can't be overstated. So I just wanted to express my thanks for the work of you and your team.
And it's a two-way thanks. I always appreciate being invited in front of a board. As an auditor, it's the control at the top, or the tone at the top. If there's an engaged board, generally you're going to have a well-oiled machine, I guess, to put it in a quick summary. Yep.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sir, Ms. Roberts.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for, I guess, through you to Elizabeth and to the town manager. And these, my questions are regarding some outstanding recommendations from a prior year. And the comments are, we're having a solution to the issue by the end of this fiscal year, 2024, things like that. How is that progressing? That's more in your realm of operations, and this is
Sure.
from the audit results of a prior year.
It's funny you ask, Deborah. Biz and I met on this today. We're narrowing in on the comprehensive scope of the Collins Center on our financial policies and procedures, and Biz and I debated vigorously for an hour today as to what should be in the scope, what doesn't need to be in the scope, and we zeroed in and narrowed that down today so that we can complete the project by September. So by October of this year, once we bring the manual before the board for your codification, we'll be laying out these policies in regular training sessions. It will transform how we as a town manage money. And it's going to involve multiple information hearings and sessions with the FinCom, with the general public, with town meeting members, in terms of how we do everything from cash management to debt to stabilization to OPEB, to everything. And so this document will be the basis for that discussion and the change that we can start making in October of this year. Not next year, this year. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing that manual, that new policy, financial policy. Thank you very much.
Got it.
Excellent. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thanks so much. Our next order of business is to the introduction of new police officers for the town of Stoughton. I'd like to call forward Chief McNamara.
Good evening, all. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. We have 4 of our 5 newest officers that we'd like to introduce this evening. Can you hear me better? I don't want to be too loud, So I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate that the board letting me introduce 4 of our 5 newest officers. Our 5th officer had a commitment with his military unit, so he couldn't be here today, but I will introduce him and what his accomplishments are, what brings him to the Stoughton Police Department. Today is a celebration of new beginnings for these officers, their introduction to the town of Stoughton and to this select board. About a year ago, they started their journey to becoming police officers for the town of Stoughton with the vigorous process that we conduct for hiring in the town of Stoughton for our police officers. that begins with an orientation. That orientation is conducted by one of our detectives, 50-page application that they fill out. It's very tedious. It's a test of their attention to detail. So it begins when they get that orientation appointment and date, that they come into the police station and how they present themselves, and that's the beginning of the process for our hiring. We pay attention to every detail. We have detectives and police officers that are full-time officers that conduct those background investigations that are very comprehensive and very lengthy. And to get through that very in-depth background is a testament to the character of the individuals you're going to meet tonight. So that hiring process began a year ago when we called for, at the time, a civil service list, and these individuals took this test and scored well enough, and we brought them in. After their background during the summer of '23, they were interviewed, and it's an interview panel with myself, at the time Deputy Chief Holmes, who is now the chief of another police department, and a lieutenant and a detective sergeant, and the candidates come in and sit in front of that panel and go through a number of questions into their background and into who they are before we even give them a conditional offer. That conditional offer then, is step one, I guess I would say. At that point, they've gone through that vigorous background, and then step one is that conditional offer. They still have many steps to go. So they then take a medical physical and a psychological and a PAT test and a fitness test to get into the academy. All of that culminated with them getting offers of employment signed by the appointing authority, the town manager. They began their next step, which was even more vigorous and rigorous, which is the academy. So in February, they began the academy with the Massachusetts, the MBTA 51st Mass Police Officer class. That academy is 26 weeks long. That 26-week-long academy is not easy. It's very rigorous in itself, fitness-wise, academically. The classes they take is pretty extensive. Constitutional law, criminal law, juvenile law, motor vehicle law, domestic violence courses, applied patrol procedures, defensive tactics, just to name some of the classes that they take in that 26-week period of time. It's very strict and very rigorous. We like it that way, because when they come out, they're going to get the same when they come into our department, because they then go into a 12-week field training program. So they're about to finish a 2-week stint that they've had since they graduated the academy of policies and procedures and our own training that we put them through with taser training and our own policies and procedure trainings that's been going on currently for the last about approximately 9 days of employment within the department. And they were at the range today qualifying with our instructors. They've taken taser classes with our instructors over the last few weeks, and they're about to enter on-the-job field training with senior veteran officers. That's going to start at the end of this week. So all of that culminated when they finished the academy, and they graduated on May 22nd, and then they were sworn in here on the 23rd by our assistant town clerk. All great accomplishments, but they're not there yet. They still have 12 weeks of field training and an assessment that will go on over that 12 weeks to make sure that they can do the job. Classroom, they learn a lot, but they learn even more when they interact with our community. Today, I would like to introduce those officers, and I'm going to name each one of them. They're going to come up, and I'm going to have them line up over here, and then they'll stand here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about their background to just give you a small glimpse of who they are and the newest members of our department. Curtis Burris, Officer Dion Dos Santos, Officer Daisy Guzman, Officer Ashley Westover, and our fifth officer that can't be here today again, as I said, you can move down just a little bit, is Officer Kang Lam. He couldn't be here. He has a commitment with his military reserve unit, annual training that he was required to do. It is with great pleasure that I introduce them to you, to our community. They're in the beginning stages of their career. They are embarking on this career as a police officer, and I would like to acknowledge all the hard work and dedication and sacrifices they and their family have made over the last 28 weeks to get to this point. So Curtis Burris has lived in Stoughton almost his entire life. He graduated from Stoughton High School in 2015. He continued his education first by attending Massasoit Community College, a short stint at Salem State University, and then Bridgewater State, where he attained his Bachelor of Science degree in 2021 in criminal justice. Officer Curtis, while attending high school and while furthering his education in college, he maintained employment in numerous locations and businesses, local businesses in our community. So he's going to know some of the business owners in our town. One of those employment opportunities was with IKEA, and he worked for IKEA for 6 years, maintaining a full-time position while he was going to school to attain his bachelor's degree. And the last 3 years of his employment with IKEA was in risk and compliance. So that's Officer Burris. He's the first one next to Town Manager Coulter. Standing to his right is Officer Dion Dos Santos. He's a graduate of the Norwich Free Academy in Norwich, Connecticut in 2014. He then attended Mount Ida College in Newton, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice. In 2018, he joined the U.S. Army and served active duty until 2022. He transferred over to the Mass Army National Guard, where he still serves as a reserve. To his right is Officer Daisy Guzman, graduate of Charlestown High School in 2012. Officer Guzman is the proud mother of her 2 daughters, Sophia and Hazel. Since 2014, Officer Guzman has chosen to live and raise her family here in Stoughton. Officer Guzman is described by her neighbors during the background investigation as a responsible, empathetic, assertive when necessary, and should make a good guardian for our community by one of her neighbors. Next to her right is Officer Ashley Westover. She has lived in Stoughton most of her life as well, a graduate of Cardinal Spellman in 2012. She enrolled herself in college to attain a bachelor's degree, and I anticipate, so I am slightly calling her out right now, to see her attain her final degree in the near future. During her background, her previous employer described her as a dependable, diligent, and ideal employee, which we expect those attributes to continue while she is employed in the Stoughton Police Department. Our fifth officer, as I said, couldn't be here, is Kang Lam. He's at his training commitment for his military unit. He was born in Vietnam and raised there until he was 16 years old, when he came to America as an exchange student and lived in Texas for 3 years before he moved to Massachusetts. He joined the U.S. Army in 2014 and was deployed in 2016. He transferred over to the Mass Army National Guard as a reserve, where he continues to serve. Officer Lamb became a corrections officer in 2020 with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office before he was hired by the Stoughton Police Department. Those are our 5 newest officers, and we have 1 still in the academy, which we look to introduce sometime in the beginning of August at your next meeting in August. Thank you. Do you want to take a break? Do you want to take a break? Take a break? Mr. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
In the giving folks a chance to filter out, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. 5. Okay. We're going to call back to order the Select Board meeting of June 4th. Our next item on our public agenda, item 4, is a public hearing. And I'm going to turn this over to our Vice Chair, Scott Carrera, to lead. For the purpose of the public hearing, we should direct all of our comments and questions to the Vice Chair. He's in charge of this section of the meeting. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Cavey. I'm going to open this hearing with this wording. Pursuant to General Law C 140, Section 157, to hear and consider a nuisance dog complaint dated March 12, 2024, filed by the Stoughton Animal Control Officer concerning 2 dogs harbored at 44 Atherton Street and owned by Joshua Holbrook. Can I have a motion to open the hearing?
So made.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We're open. To everybody on the board, we did get information and letters, and we have a letter from a dog officer, and it was directed to Chairman Cavey, and from Michelle Carlos, it says, this letter is in regards to a request for a nuisance hearing in regards to 2 dogs, Max and Monty, who reside at 44 Atherton Street with their owner, Joshua Holbrook. I have received 2 letters for hearing requests from neighbors. They're attached inside. Also, I have a call history and interaction with Mr. Holbrook. Per approval, I'm requesting the Select Board to review and add to the town agenda. I'm going to yield and turn it over to Steve Chaplin, our attorney, and he will chronologicalize, take it through the steps. He will bring up who he needs to talk to, and then we'll go and talk to the dog owner, and then if there's any comments from the public, I'll open it up to the public, and then we'll go from there. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, for the record, Steve Chaplin. Can everybody hear me?
Pull that closer.
Is that better? It's better. For the record, Steve Chaplin, Mead, Tallerman, and Costa, we're town council in the town of Stoughton. Just to give a little bit of overview as to what brings us here, we have a statute in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that says if there's a written complaint regarding either dangerous dog or a nuisance dog, it's the select board that gets designated by statute as the authority for conducting a hearing. And the statute says that it needs to be an evidentiary hearing. So what we typically do is we'll call witnesses up one at a time. I will swear them in as if we were in a courtroom, and we will go through the framework that's laid out in the statutory section that was referenced before. So it's Chapter 140 of the general laws, which is licensing, and it's Section 157, which is specific to dogs. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of some terminology that we need to be fluent with. There is a statutory definition of a dangerous dog, and there's a statutory definition of a nuisance dog. And after we hear the evidence, the first thing the board is going to need to do is the board is going to need to make a finding. Are the dogs that the board heard about a dangerous dog under the statutory definition? Are the dogs we heard about a nuisance dog under the statutory definition? Or are the dogs we heard about neither of those things? If the dogs are neither of those things, the hearing stops. That's the end. There's no further to go. If the dog is found to be a dangerous dog, then the statute sets out 7 different remedial measures that the board can order. The statute says the board has to order 1 or more of those 7 if the dog is found to be a dangerous dog. The most extreme is to have the dog put down. Other of the options include ordering that the owner carry certain liability insurance, that the dog be restrained or tethered or muzzled. That's the flavor for if the dog is a dangerous dog. If the board finds that the dog is a nuisance dog or the dogs are nuisance dogs, then the statute very broadly and vaguely says that the board shall order remedial action. So if the board were to find that these dogs constitute nuisance dogs, as the term is defined in the statutes, that the board has to order some type of remedial action, but the board can be creative. There's some flexibility there. So the natural starting point is we have to know what these definitions are. And then after I do that, I'm going to explain a couple of exceptions in the law, and then we can jump right into the hearing. So the statutory definition of a nuisance dog, there's 3 ways to get there. It's a dog that, 1, by excessive barking or other disturbance, is a source of annoyance to a sick person residing in the vicinity. That's the first way a dog could be a nuisance dog. The second way is by excessive barking causing damage or other interference, a reasonable person would find such behavior disruptive to one's quiet and peaceful enjoyment. That's the second way a dog could be a nuisance dog. And the third and final way is that a dog has threatened or attacked livestock, a domestic animal or a person, but such threat or attack was not a grossly disproportionate reaction under the circumstances. So if the board finds that any of those 3 are met, then the board would make a finding that the dogs we're hearing about tonight are nuisance dogs. In contrast, a dangerous dog, there's 2 ways to get there. The first way is without justification, the dog attacks a person or domestic animal, causing physical injury or death. And the second way is that a dog behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified, imminent threat of physical injury or death to a person or to a domestic or owned animal. So if the board finds that the incidents complained of rise to that level, the board would make a finding that the dogs are dangerous. So before we jump into the hearing, there's just a couple of exceptions that the board needs to be aware of. The first exception is a dog cannot be deemed dangerous, meaning it could be deemed a nuisance, but not dangerous. 1, solely based upon growling or barking, or solely growling and barking. The second exception is a dog cannot be deemed dangerous based upon the breed of the dog. You can't make a finding of dangerous solely because a dog is a particular breed. And the third exception is if the dog was reacting to another animal or to a person and the dog's reaction was not grossly disproportionate to any of the following circumstances. And those circumstances are protecting or defending itself, its offspring, another domestic animal, or a person from an attack. The second circumstance is that the person who was attacked or threatened was committing a crime upon the person or property of the owner. The third circumstance would be the person attacked or threatened by the dog was engaging in teasing, tormenting, battering, assaulting, injuring, or otherwise provoking the dog.
And the fourth and final category is, at the time of the attack or the threat, the person or the animal that was attacked or threatened by the dog had breached an enclosure or structure in which the dog was kept apart from the public, and the person or animal was not authorized by the owner of the premises to be inside that enclosure. Are there any questions from the board as to the framework before we jump into the substance of the complaint? Okay. Since I'm in control of the hearing, which I thank the board for, what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to call our animal control officer to the stand and swear her in, and we'll have her take us through the complaints that she received, the investigation that she performed, and what she found. And although the statute doesn't say it, my practice typically is to give the owner of the dog, who I understand is in attendance by Zoom, an opportunity to ask questions after the board has had an opportunity to ask questions. So I will swear Animal Control Officer Carlos in. I will take her through her investigation and the complaints. The board will have an opportunity to ask questions. The owner will then have an opportunity to ask questions, and then we'll move on to the next witness. So could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now in hearing? And could you please state your name for the record?
Michelle Carlos.
And Animal Control Officer Carlos, could you please describe for us what brought your attention to 44 Atherton Street in this particular case?
So my original call came in the end of November. It came in as a complaint. The dogs were outside, barking nonstop, charging towards the fence. So initially I always go out and I kind of coast by and see if I can hear the dogs barking before I actually go to the house. And the dogs were outside, and then when I pulled up to the house, the owner had put them inside. And I always go easy at first, and I let them know why I'm there and that their neighbors are unhappy, that their dogs are always barking, and they're uncomfortable with it. And he wasn't very compliant, wasn't happy that I was there. And so I left it at that, so he was aware, and hopefully he would do the right thing and be more aware of his dogs and the barking. And then the next call came in February, same exact thing. I went out, and he wasn't home at the time, but his uncle, who is the homeowner, was home, and I explained to him why I was there, and then that there were going to be citations involved because it's been an issue. And then I went out again, and same issues from two different neighbors. They live in the same complex, but they're both concerned about the dogs. The dog actually cleared the fence, got out of the yard. Didn't do anything, and the owner was able to get the dog back in the yard, but obviously it's a concern because they're big dogs and they just weren't comfortable with it. And when they are behind the fence, they do charge the fence and bark a lot, so it's concerning for the neighbors, and a nuisance. So then the last time I went out and spoke to Mr. Holbrook, I gave him some recommendations. I told him some things he could do as far as the fencing, some things he could do as far as the barking control, and I gave him a bunch of handouts. I recommended tethering. That way there was no chance that the dogs could get outside or just staying with the dogs. And then I informed the neighbors of what I told him and the recommendations I gave, and I let them know that if he, moved forward with those recommendations, then we wouldn't have to go forward with a nuisance hearing. And then the neighbor called me a couple weeks later and said it was the same issue. So they both ended up emailing me those letters that I submitted to you guys and requested the nuisance hearing.
So quick follow-up. When you went out to the property, did you actually hear the dogs barking?
I did, yeah.
And is it your conclusion that the barking was excessive?
I'm not there long enough to know if it's excessive, but the neighbors stated every time they go outside, if the dog hears anything, they start barking and they start charging the fence. So
when you went to the property, were the dogs outside or were they inside?
They were outside the first time, but he quickly put them in the house. And then another time, just one of the dogs were outside. But he seems to be able to get them in the house quickly when I'm on the call.
And they start barking when you approach, and then he
Yeah,
calls them in?
yeah.
So one of the recommendations was it fencing?
Yep, to either fix the fencing. Another recommendation I did, if like fencing was out of the question, I know that can get expensive, was just getting the appropriate tethering equipment, which I gave him all the guidelines, all the state guidelines on that, the appropriate length, height, all of that. And then as far as the barking, I said there's so many different options. They have the collars, that some of them you don't have to get the shock collar. You can get one that actually squirts water in their face, and just to kind of like redirect them to stop barking. And they also have like ultrasonic sound machines that whenever the dog barks, it emits that noise and they can't stand it, so it redirects them and makes them stop. And that's a super cost-effective thing that you can get on like Amazon for $20. So easy solutions.
How high is the fence? Relative, when
Maybe
you were
4 feet and change.
so
Not
it's
that high.
Not taller than you.
Yeah.
And what kind of fence is it? A chain link or a
A
stockade?
portion of it is chain link, but some of it seemed like it was like plastic fencing. So
Okay.
kind of like plastic netting.
And for this size of dog, how high would the fence need to be to prevent the dog from jumping over it?
I would say at least 5 to 6 feet at least, because they're big dogs.
Okay. And just kind of in broad brushstrokes, you talked about the state guidelines for tethering. How does that work? It has to be a certain tensile strength?
Yes, yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I printed it out for Mr. Holbrook, and I highlighted all the guidelines for him so he would know if he were to tether them. And then you can only tether for so long. I think it's no longer than 5 hours in a 24-hour period.
Oh, I see.
So that's even if they're outside, like without being tethered. If they're out in the backyard, it's supposed to be no longer than 5 hours in a 24-hour period. So they shouldn't be out there longer than that.
Okay. And then just to kind of put a bow on it, you're calling the hearing a nuisance hearing, and not to put words in your mouth, but that's because the dogs didn't attack anybody.
Yeah, the dogs have not done anything to make me feel like they're dangerous, other than charging at the fence. But like you said, in those guidelines, we can't deem a dog dangerous just for barking and growling, and that's all they've done.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for the animal control officer? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Question, and unfortunately, I've been through this, and I've sat through these hearings, and to say that I don't think so, and it could, we've sat through these, and my colleagues as well have, when people have been bitten. Other family animals were killed. I'm trying to think, there was another one, a person very close to me, that a dog showed, anger a couple times, but then just lunged at her and bit her. So I know a nuisance and a danger are two different things. But again, I really don't even know how to phrase the question at this point, because how do we know what their capability is?
We don't.
We don't.
No.
Okay, so you answered that question. We don't know. How do we know we won't have a same situation that you've been here before for that ended horrifically? Right? We don't know.
We don't know.
But could we assume that there's reason for heightened awareness?
Definitely, yes, just from their behavior behind the fence line.
Right. Okay. And I was writing notes here, because I take notes, and I didn't catch how you answered the question regarding the fence. You mentioned it was a 4-foot fence. And then
Around that,
All right,
I don't
and
know
then-
exactly,
okay,
but yeah.
In the area.
Yeah.
Let's say anywhere from 3 to 5.
Yeah, I
Let's
would say it's probably like up to
Okay.
here on me.
And then I heard 5 to 6 feet. Was that, what had you make that comment? Did the
Just so the
question
dog can't clear the fence
All right, so.
by jumping.
Exactly. So was the fact that you made the comment, can a dog jump 5 to 6 feet? Was that, or how did that 5 to 6 feet pop in? That's what I'm curious.
Just a recommendation as
Okay.
height-wise for the fence to keep the dogs
Okay.
contained
Well, then my
so they don't
question
clear
would
the
be,
fence again.
how, those types of dogs, what are they capable of? What are they capable of for a jump?
I don't know exactly.
You don't know?
I've never.
Okay. would it be reasonable for me to assume that they could clear a 4-foot fence?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Thanks. I just have a couple of questions. We worked through these kind of methodically, so I apologize. But you've already said that you don't consider these dangerous dogs, but just go by the criteria here. You don't feel that there was, so nobody has been attacked.
No one's been attacked. One of the dogs cleared the fence one time that I know of, but nothing happened, and the owner was able to get the dog back in the yard.
And another criteria for dangerous dog is that they behave in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified imminent threat of physical injury or death to a person or a domestic animal. So we feel like that never happened. There was nobody who's ever
No, I know
experienced imminent
the
threat.
neighbors do feel threatened just because of the way they act every time they walk outside,
Yeah.
and they want to just be able to hang out outside, especially this time of year. And if, the dogs are barking nonstop and kind of digging at the fence, and so it's understandable.
Yeah, and as Mr. McCrisky had mentioned, you've personally seen the aftermath of some dogs that are even smaller than these dogs that people's lives. And I think there was another set of dogs that were much larger, but that there was people were sent to the emergency room. There's a lot of blood. Other animals were mauled to death. So we've seen. I know we've been lucky enough to mostly not have to witness that. But you've seen these types of things before, and I appreciate your attention in bringing this to us. With regard to the nuisance dogs, so the couple of criteria here, just as I work through it, excessive barking is a sort of qualitative. Right now, there's no way of measuring when you hit the
correct,
excessive,
yeah.
right? But we do have how many neighbors have complained?
2.
Two. So 2 people, and in your time there, you also noticed there was a lot of barking, but you weren't there long enough to necessarily.
Yes, the dogs definitely seem wary of strangers and anyone kind of coming near the property.
Okay. So there's a very possibility that there was excessive barking, at least the neighbors do. I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to have it verified. One of the requirements is that this excessive barking be a source of annoyance to a sick person residing in the vicinity. Is there anybody in the vicinity who
Yes,
would qualify as sick?
One of the complainants, I know she just underwent some surgery and some chemo. She's been dealing with a lot of personal issues, so it's been really hard for her in particular.
And she's one of the people who has reached out to complain. The next section here includes by excessive barking, so we can decide whether or not that's true or not. Causing damage or other interference. Does the dog cause any damage or interference? I'm not really sure how to interpret interference exactly, but at least let's start with just damage. Has the dog caused any damage?
I don't believe the dog has created any damage.
So we'll reach over to our attorney. How do we interpret interference?
I would consider it reasonable if someone were to interpret interference in a court proceeding as inability even to sit out on one's porch and enjoy their yard, or inability to enjoy their property.
Or to walk on a public way.
Exactly, or a public sidewalk.
Yeah.
That would stand the test as interference, a reasonable interpretation.
Okay. In that case, do we have people who are feel like the dog's barking interferes with their basic activities?
Yes.
Okay. So the answer is yes. And then that a reasonable person would find such behavior disruptive to one's quiet and peaceful enjoyment. So I think once again, so long as we assume the people who've reached out are reasonable, that we can conclude that's probably true as well. And the last one is that the animal has threatened either livestock, a domestic animal, or a person. Has anybody, you mentioned that people have felt threatened?
I think they do feel threatened just because of the behavior of the dogs, even though they are behind that fence, knowing that they cleared the fence that one time, and they have that fear of the unknown.
Yeah. And so, but the dogs have barked and, maybe even made, I've got dogs as well. Sometimes they look a lot scarier.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So I don't want to oversell this here, but so but nobody was like, sort of stalked by the dog, or there's the dog lunged or anything like that.
I don't
There's
believe so.
There's no activity. There's
Yeah.
no more overt threat to a person. Okay, I appreciate all those. I'm just kind of, some of these I feel certain about, and others I feel a little bit more on the fence about. But I appreciate that. And I've read through some of this, but I want to make sure I just understand it correctly. So you've been called to this property 3 or 4 times, is that right?
Yes, correct.
And during those times, you've offered solutions that might
Yes,
be able to
yep,
help.
every time.
Have any of those suggestions been implemented?
I don't believe so. According to the neighbors, they have not been.
For the time being, I think I don't have any further questions, but I might come back to something in a little bit. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I don't have any further questions. However, Mr. Holbrook, I believe, is the owner of the dog. And I apologize. I apologize.
I was just going to ask if, Deborah, do you have any questions?
No, not for our officer. Thank you.
Okay. Lou?
Thank you. I saw pictures of the dogs when they were outside on the street, and they just looked like they were sniffing around, looking around, and so on. The person who took the pictures, was that you?
No. I received those
Wasn't
pictures.
being attacked at the time. I mean, so I guess I'm wondering, the 2 people who are in the house next door, are they at all familiar with dogs? Have they had them themselves?
I'm unaware.
I mean, I know that this is sort of leading in a strange
Yeah.
direction, but I've seen a lot of dogs that bark a lot,
Yeah.
and they're friendly. I mean, they're not vicious. They're not threatening. They just bark. And that's a nuisance. There's no question about that. This area is an old area of town, and I think the lots are about 1/4 of an acre or something like that. And I mean, they're the kind of place that I grew up in, and we had neighbors, and people talked with one another and tried to work things out. And I'm trying to find out whether or not maybe there's a way to have a cookout rather than having people angry at one another.
I think I tried that attempt.
And I'm sorry?
I think I tried that attempt, just kind of with my recommendations. And if I may add, I did go in the backyard at one point when one of the dogs was in the yard, and it didn't come near me at all. It had nothing to do with me. It seemed more fearful than anything. So I was in the dog's territory, and it did not approach me at all.
Yeah. I think you answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gito. Attorney Steve, we're going to allow the, I'll call him the defendant,
The owner.
the owner, Josh, to speak. Josh, do you want to unmute yourself and have something to say, sir?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to set the first thing straight. Neither one of my dogs jumped over the fence.
Mr. Vice Chair, may I?
When I first got here,
He's
I
not
had
sworn.
a couple of fold-out lawn chairs in front of the steps that are in front of my house, and they walked through.
Josh,
them,
Josh,
okay?
hang on one second, can you?
Yep.
We're trying to get some audio.
And Mr. Vice Chair, may I, as a point of order, we have not sworn Mr. Holbrook
Okay.
at this point, so what I was going to do is ask him if he would like to ask the animal control officer any questions about her testimony to clarify. At a later point, we would certainly swear him in and give him an opportunity to provide his own testimony. Mr. Holbrook, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Yep, that's better, Steve.
Fantastic. Do you have any questions for the animal control officer based upon the testimony that she's given, understanding that we will swear you in and give you an opportunity to provide your own testimony in just a few moments?
Yeah, definitely. She said, or I want to know, she said that I never implemented anything that she told me to do. And then in the same breath, she spoke of a plastic fence. Well, that was my first attempt to put up a fence. Was it not?
Yes, that's what your neighbors informed me that you did. That's why I
Okay,
said
then
that.
I did attempt to do what you told me to do. When you just told them that I made no attempt.
Mr.
So
Vice
that's a
Chairman.
lie.
Josh, don't be attackative. Just be a little
I'm
nice.
getting lied about, and I need to defend myself in one way or another. I did attempt to put up a fence in the beginning. It was cold out. I didn't have the right materials, and it didn't work. It failed. Yes, it did. Now that it's warm out, I've put up a new fence, a metal fence. The dogs don't even go on that side of the home any longer. They have not barked at those people on that side of the house in months. I'm doing everything I can to remedy the situation. I don't enjoy when my dogs bark the way they did on those occasions that you've listed. I'm not disputing that they barked on those occasions by any means. I train my dogs to be kind and peaceful. The big guy, all he wants to do is play fetch. If he's barking at you, it's because he wants
Mr.
a ball
Holbrook,
thrown.
Josh, hang on a second. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Holbrook.
Yeah.
What you've offered is testimony and you haven't sworn in yet. So we'd like you to stick to the questioning of the animal control officer, and then we can move on to your testimony after you've been sworn in.
Okay, my next question. Did you witness the dogs clearing the fence that you speak of?
I did not, like I said, in my
No,
testimony, it was
you
the
said
neighbors.
multiple times the dogs cleared
told
the
me.
fence.
The neighbors told me, the complainants told me.
That's hearsay.
Maybe we should just swear on.
Josh, when you ask a question, give Ms. Carlos a chance to answer, and if it isn't what you think is right, just hang on, then you can re-ask, all right?
Okay, so the answer is no one saw the dogs clear the fence that you say you
I'm
saw.
not sure if they actually saw it happen or not, but they did provide pictures of the dogs outside of your property. So the dogs did get out of the yard. I'm not sure how they got out of the yard, but they were able to either clear the fence, go under the fence, get out of the yard somehow.
Okay.
So that did happen, so that's not a problem. What we're trying to do is come to a result that you're not going to lose the dogs, you're not going to have to do anything.
And
you know.
I've remedied the situation to this point by putting up the metal fence and the metal fence posts since the weather's gotten warm and the ground's gotten soft, and I've been able to do so. I told the animal control officer lady, ma'am, did I not tell you in the wintertime that as soon as the weather got warm and the ground was soft, I would put in metal fencing with metal posts? Did I not?
I don't recall that. I know you said you would work on it. And then the last time that I spoke to one of the neighbors, she said that you had only put up the plastic one. So that was the last fencing I was made aware of. But that's excellent that you put in new fencing.
All right, my questions are over.
You're all set, Josh?
I mean, yeah, I have no further questions for her.
Okay. Do you have any other statements that you might want to be sworn for by the attorney?
I mean, I'll swear in and I'll just repeat everything I just said because, like I said, I've done everything I can to this point to make sure that I've remedied
So the
the
answer is
situation.
yes. Let's do a swearing in.
So, Mr. Holbrook, could you, I know your video is not on, but could you please raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now in hearing?
Yes, I do, sir.
And in an effort to streamline this a bit, you've just made a number of statements in the conduct of your questioning of the animal control officer. Do you adopt those statements as your sworn testimony in this matter?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay, sir, the floor is yours.
Well, like I said, I've done everything asked of me as far as putting in a new fence. I did put in a new fence. The dogs don't go on that side of the home any longer. They don't bark at those people any longer. I've seen both of the people who have written letters outside, out and about, enjoying the day in the afternoon, while my dogs are out at the same time with no barking. Now, if they were present, I would hope that they would tell the truth and say, yes, that's the truth. Now, I don't know what the complaints look like, but I would imagine that since the only complaints that were listed on the paper that I received, those are the only complaints that were received by you. So if that's the case, then obviously I've done something to quell the issue where they're not continuing to complain, speaking of the neighbors.
So, Mr. Holbrook, just so I understand your testimony, you are aware of the complaints received in November and February of this year, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm not disputing any complaints. I know that the dogs had acted obnoxious and did not act in the manner that I want them to.
Okay.
And I've done a lot of things to quell the issue. Like I said, I've put up new fencing. I went and purchased e-training collars for them to help make sure that they're not barking at anyone or anything. And everything is working well. I'm sitting outside with the dogs right now while people are walking up and down the road, and you don't hear anybody barking.
Okay, so, sir,
You can hear them panting in the background.
I just want to make sure, just to clarify the testimony, you're saying there were complaints, they were brought to your attention, and in essence, you sought to rectify the complaints via fencing and the other measures that you just described for the board. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. I've done what the lady officer, the patrol officer lady had asked me to do. She said that I wasn't receptive. I might have been a little bummed out the way that I was approached, whereas the neighbor didn't even attempt to ask me to try to remedy a situation, and she just went straight to a police officer to try to remedy the situation when this didn't have to go this route. The other gentleman that spoke and asked if there was a possible cookout that could happen, he had the right frame of mind to say, I agree with that gentleman 100%. You know, my dogs, we lived on a 100-acre farm property in Oklahoma before I moved here or moved back here to help my mom. My mom recently had a stroke, and that's why I'm back in Stoughton to help her. So my dogs didn't know neighbors. The closest neighbor was over a quarter mile away. Now I'm on less than an acre of property and people all around them constantly. They don't know any better. They're learning. And they're getting a lot better. I promise. I'm trying to stay on top of it. I really am. I don't want them to be nuisance dogs by any means.
Okay, hang on, Josh. I have a question from one of my members. Deborah.
Hello, Mr. Holbrook. Thank you so much for correcting the issue with the fence, or in the process of correcting the issue with the fence as recommended by our animal control officer. My question for you is, I know you're in the process of correcting the fence. What is the
fence
height?
has been corrected.
I've
already replaced the fence.
What is the height?
Josh, let her speak,
about
please.
4.5 feet tall.
Wait a minute, I did not hear that, because I was looking for an answer.
4.5 feet tall?
So the recommendation is at least 6 feet.
This is a fence inside of my property line to keep the dogs away from the outside fence of the property line.
So
I'm trying to keep my dogs away from the other side of the property altogether. In order to make sure that there's no issue whatsoever, the dogs can't get to that side of the home.
So,
This fence is
Mr.
cutting off a piece
Holbrook,
of property in my yard.
so Mr. Holbrook, let me understand completely. The original fence was about 4 feet tall. The recommendation from the officer was to install a fence a minimum of 6 feet tall.
The original fence is almost 100 years old that goes with the original property. The new fence is a fence within the property line, inside the home, inside the property, that's keeping the dogs from getting to the left side of the house.
Yes, but the recommendation was a minimum of 6 feet. So from my perspective, you didn't fulfill the recommendation. You did something else, another alternative. That's what I'm hearing. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. You did not fulfill the recommendation of the animal control officer because her recommendation was
She
a
did not
minimum
give
of
me-
6 feet.
She did not give me measurements.
She
by
did
any
not
means.
give you measurements?
No,
Okay.
to his defense, sorry.
Okay.
I did not
She
give
did-
him
she
any
just said she did
recommendation
not give me
height-wise. I
measurements.
just said to repair the fence where they were getting out.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't
Thank
tell him a certain height, but I did give him, like I said, that packet with the tethering guidelines with all the state laws.
Thank you very much. So then, I guess I have no further questions for the owner. My question would be directed back to the animal control officer when the time is appropriate.
Thank you. What's that?
I have a question for the control officer when time is appropriate. I can go now?
You can go now, Deb.
Okay. So I'm trying to visualize what the owner, Mr. Holbrook, did. So the original fence, 4 feet tall. What I'm envisioning he did was install another fence on the inside, the perimeter of his property, which is also 4 feet tall.
That's
So
what I'm-
how, if the dog is likely, because dogs get larger and they have power to jump, if the dog is able to jump could possibly jump the first 4, what's to say that he can or cannot jump that second fence that's on the interior? I'm just
And
I can't
So we
prove
don't-
to
I
myself
know.
that there's a safety net in there.
the only thing we don't know for sure, unless the witnesses come to stand and say that they actually saw these dogs clear the fence, I can't stand here and say that they did. I know there was a weak point in the fence, and that might have been how they got out. All I had for evidence were the pictures of the dogs outside of the fence line. So I just don't feel comfortable saying, yes, they're going to clear these fences when they might not be able to.
So to make a letter of recommendation, would you have, this is to the animal control officer, would you have to go back to the premises, make another observation, and then come up with a list of recommendations and come back to the board? Because what I heard was fix the fence, the teetering, and then the collar.
Which seems like that's what he did. He got the e-collar, and I wasn't made aware of that. I was just going off of the last complaint that I had, and that's when I submitted this. So I did not know that Mr. Holbrook, no one had informed me
Okay,
that
got
he
it.
had moved forward with doing anything. The last complaint I had was that he had only put up the plastic. And then they recommended that I move forward with having this nuisance hearing. And then that was the last I had heard from anyone.
Thank you very much. That's
You're
very
welcome.
clear. Thank you.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And I'm not sure how I would pose this question. It's difficult when you sit here and we talk about a potential issue. Counselor, if I go out, please shut me down if I'm getting beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But I think at least the homeowner needs to know how, at least me sitting here as a hearings officer on this issue, who has seen the dogs at this location walking freely when they're not supposed to be out there walking freely, when we have had at least 3 very serious dog attacks from homeowners that said, my dogs didn't, we didn't know that would happen. But we're involved, and one young lady was severely attacked, and as a result of that attack, other issues medical issues had arisen, and she passed away. So when you hear these things, as a hearings officer, I don't want to be sitting here ever and walk away from this meeting tonight not knowing that something solid, something achievable, and something that will be fact-based on the results of what gets done. Hearing, I'm doing the best. That's great. That's a good thing to say, hopefully, but I want to see something more tangible. I want to hear, you won't see my dogs beyond the fence again. I will do something, whether it's installing a bigger fence so that they can't come out and get a running start and leap over it, or a collar. I don't know. He said he's, evidence by means of a receipt showing a purchase of a collar. Maybe the animal control officer making another inspection of the site where she can witness the improvements that have been made. And we give the homeowner the opportunity to say, keep his word of what he said he's done, show us what you've done, show us how the animals cannot get beyond the property, and how basically a homeowner can walk by that home and not somebody that's been attacked by a dog in the past. And again, I'm speaking from experience. Somebody that's been attacked by a dog is so nervous when they hear a dog bark in an aggressive manner. Because this one here, and I won't say it, but it's very close to me, and every time they're in that situation, they remember that time. And that is not good to have in your neighborhood. That's all there is to it. So I would like to see us, at least we have tonight a takeaway that the animal control officer go back, speak with the homeowner, document what's been done, that the homeowner take into consideration what my colleagues have said here tonight and asked questions about, and what we're looking for, because the next time, if we're here, it's going to be different. We want to work with anyone, all of our homeowners in town, but we also have to protect the people that live in the neighborhood. There's that funny part of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the right to happiness and pursuit of happiness, right? And when you have something like that in the neighborhood, you're not comfortable. So, and I would be, for the homeowner who's here with us tonight, I would be defending him 100% the same way if he was the person that had a complaint about one of the neighbors, because we've got to get around, we've got to get along in our neighborhoods. So that's, if you want to call it a question, but I would not want to walk away from tonight without an agreement with the homeowner and the animal control officer to have a second meeting, a civil meeting. Without a doubt, tempers can flare, but that has to be put aside, because this board, our board, the select board, has to be cognizant of the rights of the people in the neighborhood to live in peace, whether it's a barking dog, an aggressive dog, or even a dog that scares you walking by. They have a right to not have to worry about that. So that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. I was going to question our lawyer. Steve, could we set forth a movement by the dog officer to go out and do a reinspection of the area and get her feedback? When I was listening to this, I thought to put the dogs on another side of the house if it was had that, and keep them in an area over there, and it seems like Josh is trying to do that. And if the dogs bark, they're aggravating him, not the neighbors. So through me to you, is there something that we as a board, and Steve's going to speak right after me, to direct, I don't want to say direct, but ask Michelle to go out and work out something with them and come back and report to us, and it's either 2 thumbs up or there might be something that she might have to modify.
So the answer to the question is yes. As town council, I feel compelled to give a more detailed explanation. I would say that the choices the board has right now, you could close the hearing and you could enter into deliberations, and quite frankly, by the letter of the law, I think there's enough in the record for the board to find that these dogs are nuisance dogs based upon the complaints. But I think there is another option that the board seems to be leaning towards, or at least the last 2 members to speak, which is to continue the hearing, leave it open, give the animal control officer an opportunity to go to collect some additional information based upon statements that the owner has made, essentially to verify or to see what the circumstances are. The most recent complaint is back in is back at the end of February, and here we are at the beginning of June. So it is conceivable that circumstances have changed. What I would suggest is that if the board is leaning in that direction, and particularly since it would be to the benefit of the owner, because what would likely, I don't want to say likely, but what could conceivably happen, I think if the board were to take a vote tonight, there probably would be a nuisance finding, whereas if this follow-up is permitted with a continuance, it might well be the case that that there is not a nuisance finding, right? That would be to the benefit of the owner. So what I would suggest is that if the board is to continue the hearing, I would want it on the record that the owner agrees to the continuance, that the owner agrees to permit the animal control officer access to the property for the purposes of conducting an inspection and reporting back to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Hope.
So what?
I'm sorry?
Are you able to hear me?
Barely. Hello?
Yeah, let me move this a little closer. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. I'm real up on this microphone. But I do have a couple questions for you, but I want to start by just making a couple statements. First of all, I've owned dogs my whole life, some of them small, some of them big, some of them docile, some of them aggressive. I've lived in cities and I've lived on farms. So I understand that there's a lot of variables in here, and I would like to come up with some solution. I think, as the other board members have alluded to, that benefits us all. And we are here to try to support you, as well as you've mentioned that you've come into town from an area that was probably a little bit more open. So in saying that, I want to just emphasize the fact that I would like for you to be able to work with us on this, and I just want to see, are you comfortable with doing that?
I mean, yeah, like I said, I've tried to do whatever that lady officer wanted me to do. Like I said, I put in fencing, I bought the e-collars, and the barking has stopped. So, like I said, I don't know what the issue is.
Okay, well,
and the way these people keep trying to pull in the dangerous dog thing, when the lawyer clearly told them what constitutes it, when they're trying to go off of past stuff. I was bit by a dog too, had 86 stitches in my arm. Trust me, I know how traumatizing it can be. But you know what? I love my dogs more than anything, and like I said, I do not train them to be mean. I'm sorry that they barked, but I'm working on getting that resolved.
Okay, so the question was, are you willing to work with us?
I have been working with you.
Okay,
100%.
well, we just met. So, but if you're comfortable working with us, that will include working with Officer Carlos. Are you comfortable doing that?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Like I said, I've been trying to work with the situation. Everyone came at me like I was the bad guy from the very beginning, and no one approached me all happy, bubbly like she tried to say she did. So. Okay. It is what it is, but I want to work with everyone to resolve the situation.
Okay, so we do too. So let's start with, I got a couple questions. That your dogs are coming from and into, and just a couple of other things. But these are just from my own experience with dogs. This would be helpful for me to understand. First of all, you have two dogs. Are they both male, female, or are they a male and a female?
They're both male.
Both male.
Can't find it.
Hold on a second. There's somebody whose phone is unmuted. I'm just going to mute them. 1 second. Okay. So the next question: how old are the dogs?
One is 4 and one is 2.
4 and 2. Are they spayed or neutered? I guess spayed.
No.
Not spayed or neutered. No. Where were you? I know you mentioned that you came from Oklahoma. Were the dogs born and sort of raised in Oklahoma?
Yeah, I bought Monty when he was like 5 weeks old, and Mac is actually one of Monty's puppies.
Okay, and so they lived out in Oklahoma up until you moved to Massachusetts.
Yep.
And the area where you lived, how much sort of landed? What did the space look like? Was it sort of open? Did you live on a farm, or were you in a residential area?
It was like 100+ acre farmland. It was just a giant open piece of prairie land with trees and whatnot.
Yeah. And so that's where they lived, was mostly out in these sort of wide open spaces with probably not a lot of interaction with people and neighbors and stuff like the cars driving, stuff like that, right?
Right. No, Monty's a COVID dog, so obviously he hasn't been around people most of his life because of COVID.
Okay.
So, that's one of the issues about socialization and whatnot. And my wife and I have been working on him with that, and we've been taking him to classes and stuff, which he's been getting a lot better. And like I said, we also purchased the e-collars, and those have been helping a ton. So we're making massive steps in trying to resolve the issues.
Excellent. How long have you been back in Massachusetts?
Can you repeat yourself? I didn't hear you what you just said.
No, it's okay. I was just wondering, how long have you been back in Massachusetts?
We got back last winter, sometime.
So less than a year?
Yeah, less than a year.
Less than a year. Okay. And I think the first complaint was in November, so probably would have been shortly after you returned.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay. And I understand your frustration. I appreciate it. From just word to your neighbors, do you understand? Like, are you sympathetic to the concerns they have?
Oh, 100%. I do, and I wish they would have come to me and said something, because I would have tried to remedy the situation for them then.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me again? I just changed mics. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you much better.
Are the dogs? I'm asking this. I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I'm going to ask anyway. Are the dogs vaccinated and registered with the town?
Of Stoughton?
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Okay. Are they? Well, let's start with, are they vaccinated?
They are. They have had their shots and stuff. Yes.
Okay. And they're just not registered with the town.
No, I haven't got to. I wanted to get them neutered first, and I just haven't been able to get an appointment to get both of them neutered.
Yeah, no problem. Just, if you don't mind acting on that, when you get a chance, we would appreciate that.
Sir. No, I will. I will.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. No problem. I just that's important for us to keep records of stuff. So I appreciate you helping me sort of understand the context of this, and I can, as much as I can see it from your neighbor's perspective, I can also understand yours as well in this. And it sounds like you've made a couple of you are making adjustments that are going to help the dogs. You mentioned that you're doing training. What kind of training are you doing, if you don't mind me asking?
Just behavioral training, socialization training. That's all, really. I mean, they're both relatively good when it comes to people. Like I said, Monty, all he wants to do is play fetch. If you throw the ball, he'll be your best friend. Mac, the hardest thing with him is telling him to not jump on people, because he wants to jump on people and lick them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really not angry dogs. They protect their property, and they've never been on such a small piece of property.
Yeah, sure.
That's literally the issue, and they're learning that not everyone is a threat. It takes a little time, but they have learned.
Yeah. If it's this is sort of outside of this hearing, but we have a dog that's a pit bull mix, and she is the most docile dog I've ever had in my entire life. But she did bark a lot, and but also had a lot of leash issues. And we started using a local company to help us out with that. There are some local places. I think there's one called Sit Mean Sit. That's I think it's a chain. They did absolutely outstanding work, and just that's. They're not paying me to say this, but if you're looking for any recommendations, they're excellent. Are you training the dogs yourself, or are you using the aid of trainers, professional trainers?
So my wife works at Petco, so she has access to a couple of different trainers at Petco.
Okay.
And we bring them in there and train with them from time to time. And, like I said, she's trying with them, with actual trainers or people who are trained to be trainers.
Yeah. Mr. Holbrook, I don't have any further questions. I want to thank you for coming to the hearing and helping us understand your position in this. We're going to try to find a solution that benefits everybody. And I hope you are willing to work with us to try to find a good solution. And I thank you very much for your time.
Yep.
We got one person that's got a raised hand. Steve, I don't know if they're a resident that's on this, or what? How do we unmute that? What's that?
Yes, I have some.
Yeah, I know. I got one from Joe and one from
No,
Lou.
I'm ready. I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready.
Okay.
Well, before you do,
I
Go ahead, Lou.
Well, I'll wait.
Is the person, so that's nothing, Steve?
There was somebody called in, and I kept on hearing them, like, I'm not able to unmute them.
That's
So it's-
smack.
the-
I'm wondering if
the
that's-
phone number ends in 91.
That's them, I think.
There's also Susan Katz. She's online as well. Is there anybody else who's online who would like to speak? There's a phone number that ends in 91. You're currently muted, so you'll have to unmute if you would like to speak. If you're not sure how to unmute, unfortunately, I don't know, but you might just have to hang up and call back. But I think there's, star something or other that gets you there. Yeah.
Go.
Sorry for jumping in.
in any discussion that you have in the neighborhood, not only should you be speaking with the dog owner, but I think that the two complainants need to recognize what has taken place, the changes that have been taken place, and what their thoughts are on that, and help them recognize that the owner of the dog or dogs has actually been trying to fix the situation. I mean, I think that just talking with the dog owner isn't enough in this process.
Is it Cynthia? You would like to say something?
Yes. Yes, Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. Like the previous speaker, I live on a farm. We've always had dogs. Unfortunately, one of them turned on me as a child, and I still have the scars. When we deal with Officer Carlos annually for the barn inspection, and she does make suggestions. My farm manager has followed them. I've never found her to be didactic or nasty or snide. I think she's thinking and considering she has to deal with more than dogs. Her comments were about the housing for our goats and our sheep. So she's knowledgeable in more than one area. What she said, though, that was striking to me was that the new state law is that you can only keep your dog outside for 5 hours now. Yeah, I mean, that's quite a restriction because I always had dogs as guard dogs to protect the livestock and to protect the farm. But 5 hours out of 24, I think that kind of gets rid of the idea of having any guard dog anymore. But that's something for all of the owners to consider is folks used to let the dogs out in the morning, go to work, maybe they come home at lunchtime, but they come back in the evening. And that was considered normal and acceptable. Well, it isn't anymore. So dog owners have to learn a few new tricks as well as the dogs. I'm fully in support of the dog, the animal control officer, but also the sympathy for the dog owner who appears to believe he's done whatever he's required to do. And I support the board in trying to see if, in fact, he's solved the problem and that this won't be back in front of the board. Like I said, I think I counted once, and over the years I've had 13 dogs. One attacked me. The other 12, I don't know what kind of guard dogs they were, because sometimes we had issues. But I think that it is true that if you've been attacked, you are fearful, but I think that the board is leaning toward trying to resolve this without labeling the dogs. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I
Go
may,
ahead,
just
Steve.
a point of clarification. I believe the animal control officer's testimony was that the hour restriction pertains to the tethering of dogs outside, not necessarily keeping of dogs outside in all circumstances.
So you can take care of your sheeps. Is there anybody else online that wants to unmute? I don't see anything, so. All right, Joe, I'll move over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I make a motion that the board continue the hearing for a minimum of 30 days, and that during that time, the animal control officer meet with the homeowner and come up with information that you could bring back to the board showing a working relationship with the homeowner, and that deliverables have been set in place, and then another date to make sure that they've been acted on. All right, I want to give the homeowner every opportunity to have a conversation, and a two-way conversation, that we just don't want to see tempers flaring doesn't do a thing, that we want to have a two-way conversation, because the concerns of the neighbors, in my opinion, are well within being warranted for this said hearing. So that's my motion.
Vice Chair?
For 30, I just want to repeat my motion that we postpone this meeting for a minimum of 30 days, and that at the next meeting following that, the deliverables be brought back to the board by the animal control officer, and I would invite the homeowner to be here as well if he would choose so. That's my motion.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Deborah?
Would you accept a friendly amendment?
Sure, what is it?
That is so the animal control officer will also talk to the neighbors that made the complaint and let them know what the updates. It's
Sure,
a
no,
follow-up to Mr. Gito's.
I have no problem with that being in the motion, but she has that authority anyway to do so. But I'll accept that in the motion, yes.
Thank you very much. And you have a second?
Does anybody else have any comments?
I would just like to say, and just make, this is more of a clarification for Mr. McCrisky, is that the deliverables that we're looking at are things that will remedy the current situation.
Yes.
That might be, anything from fences to training to whatever might be. What's our action plan going to be to help make sure that everybody's able to get along?
It should be in the ACO's authority and in her expertise of what she would like to see, and come back and say, we're making headway. We're not going to resolve everything just like that, but an ongoing relationship with deliverables that we know have already taken place. Show good faith when we come back to see if we have to continue this hearing or can we close it.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to continue with Joe's motion, and I'll take a vote. We've had a motion and a second. All those in favor of Joe's motion?
Aye.
As amended?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Mr. Vice Chair, can I just make one additional comment?
Go ahead.
Mr. Holbrook, as I mentioned, we're looking to work with you here. We're trying to find a solution that benefits everybody, and that very much includes you. Officer Carlos is going to be working with you to try to just make sure that we have an action plan in place. I think we're going to need, if you will indulge us, a little bit more of a reset where we're going to be willing to work together and try to find a solution here. This is really all of us working collaboratively. Do you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, I do, definitely.
Excellent.
I want to make one quick clarification. Now, everyone keeps harping about the height of the fence, okay? Now, anyone can go on YouTube and find one of these dogs clearing a 20-foot wall, okay? You can go find Malinois doing it. You can find Staffies doing it. you can find all these sport breed dogs literally climbing a 20-foot wall if they want to.
Fair enough. So we're going to try to find a way. Right now, the problem really seems to be more than anything else is the barking, and so we're all going to work together on this. And I'm just looking to see if you're on board.
Oh yes, sir, 100%. I just want to make sure that things are reasonable and the requests made of me are reasonable, because the whole reason for this was barking, not attacking or any violence. It was barking.
Yeah, no, that's very fair.
I need, everybody's brought violence into this, 100%. Numerous people on the board, well, blood this, blood that, dead animals, dead people, and it's like, we're talking about barking here. Like, seriously.
Well, fair enough. The dogs that led to fatalities were dogs that otherwise had no previous history. So unfortunately, we've seen some pretty grisly things, and we just want to make sure that doesn't happen. I understand maybe you feel like it's going to the extreme, but we'll do our best to be fair on our side, and we're just looking for cooperation.
So the hearing is now closed, Josh. So
okay.
your next movement is going to be from Michelle. She's going to talk to you, look at what's going on, see what she can make better, and then she'll report back to us, and then we'll reopen and either wipe it away or see what else we can do. All right? But we appreciate what you've done so far, and when she comes, just, listen, and she'll listen, and she'll do what she has to do. All right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Be well, Mr. Chaplain. Thank you so much for your time. So that concludes our public hearing. Grab this gavel back. And thank you, Mr. Carrera, Vice Chair Carrera, for helping facilitate the public hearings. I'm going to move around a little bit just because we have some guests here. I want to make sure that we can jump ahead and address their issues. Items 6 and 7 we're going to address now. This is something that Mr. McDonald, as the Chair of the Conservation Commission, will help us out with. There are 2 requests of the Conservation Commission. We'll take them one at a time, but we'll start with number 6, which is a request for stewardship of 3 open space lots. These are from the Assessor's Map 64, Parcel 60, Map 64, Parcel 29, and Map 64, Parcel 24. So we've did I misspeak? Parcel 28, sorry. And so, Mr. McDonald, we might have some questions in a second, but you mind just walking us through the request?
Good evening. Can you hear me well?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. This item, per the information that was submitted, was actually brought to James Conlon's attention by the tax officer in the town, that these parcels were owned by the town. There's abutting parcels, about 200 acres, that are owned by the town but under the care of the Conservation Commission. So I believe the tax officer or somebody in the town hall suggested to Jim that these parcels be added to the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission because they abut it. And Jim thought that was a good idea and submitted this request. It's about, 6 acres? That's to the north of 200 acres that we control as a Conservation Commission. So that's really the extent of it.
So I'm just going to go around I'm going to go around the horn here with the board. Mr. Gito, do you have any questions? Ms. Roberts?
No questions.
Vice Chair Carrera? And Mr. McCrisky?
No, sir.
Okay, so I do have a couple questions. I just want to make sure that Town manager have any questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I had a couple questions. So the land itself is, they are tax foreclosure. They are, from my understanding from the paperwork received, they are not buildable lots. These could not be used to build properties on.
I'm not a builder, but my look at the wetland map in that area, which I submitted to the board, would indicate that most likely they're not. That's why they were abandoned to the town, I think, in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah, so
it's sat abandoned to the town since 1986.
So
There's a sewer easement that goes through that, too.
my phone.
But yeah, to answer your question, I would highly doubt it. But
No problem. Yeah, so my understanding, and there's people on this board, and Mr. McDonald, you probably can answer this better than I could, but my understanding is that there are properties that are developed on, a developer will come in, basically build a neighborhood. And on lots of land where they can't build a house, they will simply allow that to foreclose and become property of the town. And since this has been the case since the 1980s, I'm assuming that might be the case here. Do we know that's the case, or seems reasonable based on the map that you showed?
yeah, the town took possession of these lots in 1991. I apologize. The town took possession of the abutting lots that have under the Care, Custody, and Conservation Commission in 1986 to the immediate south. These 3 lots were either taken to the town in 1991.
Thank you.
And Jerry, there is a sewer easement that goes through the larger one, the 64,000 square foot, 6429. Comes down Shirley Road and goes over to Brickell, and then it exits through over to Town Spa and heads that way.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
May I suggest to the members that in the future, for your benefit, that we have relevant town departments sign off before you have to make this decision. I believe Jerry, I always have, but to hear that Mr. Conlon recommended it, but he's not here to speak to it, I suggest that we have department heads, whether it be planning, assessing, conservation, sign off and answer questions like, is it buildable or not?
Yeah.
I'm sure they're appropriate to be managed by the conservation, but in the future, we may not know that.
I would have no problem with that. This was brought to Jim's attention by Teresa Cardoza, Delinquent Tax Office, in the Treasurer's Office of Stoughton.
So they're involved in auctioning off foreclosed land, so they're probably bringing it to you because it can't otherwise.
So she gave Jim the recommendation to pursue this.
But Jim should have come here.
Yes.
Well, I guess that's me.
That's okay.
No, that's Jerry. That's just the way it is. Like I said,
you,
I
Jerry.
can
It's about
appreciate your credibility is great.
Yeah.
No. Your credibility is impeccable.
If the select board does not want to take action on it, I don't think it would have any impact.
Yeah.
Because the town owns it, it sits there. I think the only issue I think the reason this was put forward, and I'm here tonight on it, would be that if the Conservation Commission wanted to do a trailhead there, that we would have to come to the Board of Selectmen to get that approval because we don't own the land.
Well,
So we would not do anything on these parcels, even though they abut 200 acres, unless we had the Select Board's approval. But if they were under our care, custody, and control, we would be able to do a trailhead there.
Right.
If we wanted, which is at this point in time highly unlikely, but nonetheless.
Yeah, I'd like to just, since we have.
I'd be happy if you want to just table it.
No. We can move forward.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to jam up the process.
No, not a problem.
I'm sure it's a good move.
We are fortunate to have our treasurer online, and she's raised her hand, so she might have some of the answers that we're looking for right now. Ms. Newt.
Yes. Good evening. The three properties that are being discussed right now, Teresa Cardozo discovered that they are on our tax possession list and that they do abut conservation property, and it would be beneficial for the town to accept those properties as conservation land so that they are, it decreases our tax possession amount that is due to the town. My thought is, and this is what I have charged Teresa with, is for her to go over the tax possession properties to find out what is abutting conservation, town-owned property, anything that we can put onto the town possession property and get it off the tax possession property, because that is one of the items that are always talked about in the audit, is that the tax possession is very high. These three properties, no, it's not going to take down $1 million, but it is about $12,000 that the tax possession would decrease by. The land should not be built upon by the Conservation Commissioner because it is conservation land. That's just my opinion on that. I don't know if the Conservation Commissioners have the right to build or to sell. I wouldn't think that they would. I would think that once it becomes town possession property, that's what it is. And because it's conservation, that's what it's going to stay as.
Yeah.
Again, that's my opinion.
Ms. Newt, just so that I can understand this, right now, this is town-owned land that we received through tax foreclosure.
That is correct.
And so, is it true that we are not able to auction this land off because it's not buildable currently?
That would be correct on my standard also, yes.
Okay, so it's not buildable land, so then it's just a matter of whether or not it's going to continue as a tax foreclosure or move over to conservation and become town-owned land, which has this different designation that's important. I appreciate that insight. Does anybody have any other questions of the treasurer?
Nope.
Ms. Roberts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's really a comment. In the packet, it's Conservation Commission meeting minutes of 4/25/2024, and Conservation Officer James Conlon was there. And I turned the page on this date of April 25th at 8:10 p.m. It's under new business. It does say that the lots are owned by the town, that abut Stoughton Conservation, and Mr. Conlon feels we should look at putting into Conservation Commission control, and they list the plots. So I think for all practical purposes, he did attest to this. But I do understand, Mr. Calder, going forward, they should be present to speak
Exactly.
in front of us.
I would have felt more comfortable, through you, Mr. Chairman. I love Jim Conlon, and I love his passion. I think Jim wishes this property would be in conservation right here. I think we need somebody from the building department to say they would support this because they're not buildable. We can't get them on the tax rolls. Every piece of spare property is not eligible for conservation unless we're told they're not buildable. And so my comment was just about, and I own this, it should have been done before it got to you today. It should go through a process where we get all of the stakeholders to sign off on it. That the Conservation Commissioner says it should go into conservation is not surprising. But if it's, right, Jerry?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table this and get appropriate information on it. And if we're going to start that process, we might as well start it now. Mr. McDonald said nothing is going to go wrong if we do it this other way. So let's just stop talking about it. Let's get the information and move on. It's now 9:10.
All in favor? Anybody have any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so then yeah, we'll table that until we're running through our engineering department and development services and get a recommendation from the rest of that board. The
Chairman, is there anything in the next one that the town manager would like to have checked? Because if it is, it should be dealt with the same way.
This is Ryan Road.
Right.
Recommendation in writing at a minimum.
Okay, so same with Ryan Road.
I'll make the motion to table on the same, on item 7, until such time that a proper recommendation through the process of the Conservation and Engineering and Building Department.
Second. Can I have an amendment?
Sure. What do you want? Whatever Scott,
A friendly amendment?
whatever Scott wants, I'll accept in the motion.
It'd be nice to have a decent plan, not to scale. I want to see it to scale and drawn so that we can understand.
Yeah, the engineering department's actually, I think, working on that right now.
All right, let's get them working on it so it comes in right. The one that was in here was, I can't turn something like that into the
So we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded, and there's been a friendly amendment to it. Ms. Roberts, you also accept the friendly amendment?
Yes.
Let me ask, can I ask a quick question? Did you folks actually properly bring this up for discussion?
There's since it's not public hearing, there's no formality to it, so this is just
Number
item
7?
7, Ryan Road.
You brought 6 and 7 together.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's fine.
Yeah.
If you want to go home for an hour, we'll bring you back.
We'll be here longer than an hour.
Just for anybody tuning in, or just for the record, just so people know what we're referring to, this is item number 7, to discuss and consider installation of parking area and emergency access gate on Ryan Road. So there's been a motion to table this and to run it through our development services.
This is, if I could, this is not on Atkinson Ave. Atkinson Ave is the small lot with the parking lot coming. This is a even smaller location where we've had some problems, actually.
That's okay. I think this one's a little bit more slam dunk, but we do have the
Can I say one thing too?
yeah, sure.
I think you got to start looking at the access to places, and in my eyes, this thing here should not be accessed from this side. That Atkinson's fine, go in that way. You don't have to walk through the woods to go by other people's houses and have more cars parked there, have the police worried about a gate. One gate belongs at Atkinson, and that would suffice, because I'm going to tell you right now, bring this stuff back, I'll probably be the only one that's going to vote against it, because I don't think the money's there for it, and I don't think it should be done.
Can I make a comment on that?
Go ahead.
This small project is to control access at that point, where there's a lot of illegal activity. So the idea is to control the illegal activity that's going into the conservation land from Ryan Road. That's really the purpose here.
Well, we can
You're
talk about that
You're
at the next
making
meeting.
access, which makes,
Yeah.
draws more in.
Could we either take
I
the
will.
motion to table off the table and discuss it, or table it? I don't care which we do.
Fair enough. Let me move on to, there is somebody from the public who wants to speak on this, and I just want to make sure that we're not leaving something important out. Ms. Katz, is there anything that you'd like to add?
If you're tabling it, you should just table it.
Well, the motion was to table, and this is how we always get off on meetings. So again, I agree with Mr. Gito. Let's table the motion. Let's table it.
We got a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Nay. So we have two in favor to table? Ms. Roberts?
I would like to table, but I also would like to hear, because you,
Then take it off the table and you
Yeah.
vote against the motion to table.
Okay,
and
I
then
vote
we'll hear
against the
rest of
motion
it,
to table.
And then we can do whatever we
Motion-
want
motion
to do.
fails.
But
To
there you
table.
go.
So we can either deal with it now. Was there something that you'd like to add?
No, sir. No,
Okay.
Lou tabled 6, not 7.
So there's a motion to, we just voted on a motion to table number 7. I'm getting punchy now. I think it's been a long day. I apologize,
it's
guys.
getting a long day.
So we're listening to something.
We wanted to listen to someone online. You were right in the
Okay.
middle of.
Ms. Katz, is there something you'd like to add to the conversation?
Excuse me. Don't I get a chance to make a presentation if you're going to take it up?
Yes. I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, all yours.
If we're taking it up, I'd just like to say
Taking it up.
that this item that's before you is a request for the town as street and road commissioners to allow a small project to go on in the street layout of Ryan Road, which is at the location is essentially abandoned by the town. It comes to a dead end, it goes into the woods. The Conservation Commission owns the woods, controls the woods beyond it, 200 acres. What we're proposing to do is essentially put up a boulder wall across the street layout to the property lines, to the abutters, and put in a gate so that emergency vehicles can access the woods and beyond like they would now, which is open with a trail that the police ATV could get through, or potentially a fire truck. It might be hard. But what we're proposing is to block that area off because we have a severe ATV problem up there in that area, damaging the property. And we also have dumping of different debris, lawn clippings, branches, et cetera. It's being used as a dump. So the initial plan was to control the access, and that's what we're here for. And the gate and the boulders are in the street layout, and the engineering department suggested that we would need to talk to you to get your blessings to do this. It's a very simple little project. The funds would come out of our revolving fund, I believe. And it's just to, as Scott mentioned, control access, but we're not trying to invite problems. We're actually trying to potentially fix a problem. And there might be parking, there might not be. We don't know at this juncture.
That's, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
That's my presentation for now.
And I'm going to, Jerry, I love you to death, you know that. But again, we haven't got a process here. I have nothing to look at. I don't know what the layout looks like. I don't know the width. I don't know what the design. This is the stuff, it's the same thing we just talked about. It's got to go through Conservation. Jim Conlon should have a letter on it. It's got to go through.
We submitted an RDA, the whole copy of the RDA that is in front of the Conservation Commission.
Okay, but-
is in your packets.
Right, but I don't have a letter from engineering. I don't have a map to see where it is. I mean,
I would like to just
unless
put
I'm
this-
missing something in the documents.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. And tell me if I'm wrong here. This is my understanding of what, based on the maps that we have available to us, is with regard to Ryan Road. Ryan Road, we can see in the map that I've got a PDF here version. It's page 77, but you'll only be able to reference that online. It's a color document. It looks like a map that's aerial shot, satellite photograph.
Mr. Chair, I understand that, but again, we pay people to tell us this is what it's going to be, and it's researched through litigation or whatever, make sure that we're not at risk anywhere.
Fair enough.
And like I said, with all due respect, Jerry's a volunteer like we are, but I go to the engineering department and I get those details before I even bring something up.
So just to continue.
I'm good, Scott. I looked at some of that stuff, but
allow me to just finish my statement here.
this is, we just get into these things and we go on forever. It's crazy.
Fair enough. So the Ryan Road, the reason why this is coming to us is specifically because there's a portion of Ryan Road that is a paper road that ends up inside of the conservation land, and that is referenced in the map here. The reason why we're being asked to opine on this at all is because there's a section that is clearly meant for conservation, inside conservation. There's water, there's like a river right in the middle of this paper road.
Well, that's Dorchester Brook. That's a sweetheart.
Yeah, and so this particular area of the paper road is under the control of the select board because it's a paper road. But there is, in fact, no road there. And they're looking to do to do some work on what amounts to, when you walk right by, you just assume it was conservation land.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're not actually talking about work that's happening on an actual road where cars are driving. It's happening on the paper road section of this.
Yeah, it's in a small grassy area at the end of the road.
Yeah, and so I mean we can run this through engineering, but in my mind this just seems like it's just contiguous with the conservation land, and the fact that it's coming to us is formality of the fact that we are in control of paper roads.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to get more detail from the town resources, but, this is for the Conservation Commission, this is a small project to try to fix a problem, but if the engineering department can be enlisted to provide a little bit more detail on it, but, frankly, it's a pile of rocks.
Okay.
That's what it says here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion that we install or approve the installation of a parking area and emergency access gate in Ryan Road.
And I will second that.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so we have 3, 4, and two noes. And so the motion passes. And that means that this land is now available for your project.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jerry, what's the bank from a brook with a name on it that runs? What is it?
Over 75 feet,
Oh.
I'm told. But we can
About
get
what?
more-
Excuse me, am I allowed to say anything about this?
Yeah, this is not a.
Like I said, I'm happy to get more details or a better plan from the engineering department, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
'cause-
I've been waiting for 20 minutes here. Am I allowed to say anything?
Correct. Yeah. So whoever's speaking, this is not a public hearing, and there's no portion of this that's open to public comment. Are you a member of the Conservation Commission?
No, I live right across the street
Okay.
from where this work is happening.
Okay. This is, as I mentioned, not a public hearing, so unfortunately, this is just for the board to decide.
So the invite for Thursday night, that's where all the neighbors show up?
Yes,
Because
that would
we
be
all-
the
we all
Conservation
get an
Commission.
invite.
Conservation
meeting
Commission
on
is
Thursday.
meeting on this Thursday in an open
Yes.
hearing
Yeah.
to.
Why are we voting on it now? That's my point.
Because in order for them to vote on it, they have to have this land cleared up from the select board. So I'm going to,
I don't know what the residents have to say, but we've already voted.
that this is something that the Conservation Commission can now go through their public hearing on.
The process is needed. Don't have what we're having right this second.
Okay. Well, it won't happen again. We'll fix it next time. In the meantime,
Nothing personal, you know that.
Yeah, I was just, told it was on the selectmen's agenda, so here I am.
I appreciate it. So our area, this is now completed. The
good.
Conservation Commission will be able to have their own vote on this
Yeah.
project themselves.
Thank you for your approval. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your comments, too. I'll make note.
Okay, so we're going to take up the consent agenda. There's one item we're going to have to pull. Item E has to be pulled. Beyond that, item E is the authorization and issuance of an $11 million bond anticipation note. We'll have to read the full motion out loud.
I don't have an item E.
I don't have an item E.
So then you're probably not looking at the most recent agenda. This was posted, I think, on Friday afternoon.
So the agenda was changed?
Yeah, the agenda was updated and it was emailed to everybody.
This is the one I got in my packet, so as far as I'm concerned, we ain't talking about E.
Well, we're going to be talking about E. It says we have this one we have to move forward on, but we have.
I could see it here, so I'm good.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's in the 11th hour on Friday that it came in to our treasury from bond council. That's why it was added late.
Yeah. So regardless, A, B, and C, A, B, C, and D of the consent agenda. Item A is the approval of open session minutes, meeting of May 21st, 2024. Item B is an addendum number 1 to the Code of Conduct and Ethics. Item C is application from Holy Ghost Society
no good to
of
see it now.
Azores for a one-day all-alcohol beverage license on July 20th, 2024 at St. John's Philharmonica Society, 845 Washington Street. Item D is application for road race or parade on July 21st, 2024 for the Holy Ghost Society of Azores, 369 Pearl Street. Does anybody have any comments on any of those items?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Roberts?
B, 5B.
Yes.
I have the same.
You have the same?
Okay, so does anybody want to pull any of these items other than E? So no request to pull any items. So just comments on item number B. This is the addendum number 1 to the Code of Conduct and Ethics. Ms. Roberts, what are your comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like my fellow board members and Mr. Coulter to turn to Section 6, Distribution and Education. This is a section that says the town clerk shall provide a copy of this policy to all members and employees as defined in the applicability section upon its issuance and upon the subsequent appointment of reappointment of any member. I would like to know if I could get my fellow board members to support when each person applies to a board, commission, or committee up front, that they agree to acknowledge that and sign off that they have received this policy, and if not, we would consider not appointing them. I believe it is very important that we act responsibly and respectfully to each member within our governance. And
Motion?
Well, I will accept a motion on that, but I was open to just a gentleman's agreement that this is the action that we would take. But if you would like to make a motion, I will definitely second that.
Well, I would just add for conversation.
Oh, you were adding to the conversation.
Well, again, because I agree with you.
Oh, thank you.
And I believe that, furthermore, that the appointment to said individual is contingent on signing it. If they don't, they're not appointed. It's considered a vacant position, and we appoint somebody else. That speaks volumes if they don't want to sign it. I don't think there'd be anybody that would have a problem, but our appointment to said person should be contingent on the signing. So if we want, I will put that in the form of a motion.
If you put that in the form of a motion, I will second that.
Any volunteer position authorized by the Board of Selectmen, and it's a policy, and the town manager's position, if we, again.
The town appointment.
Because it's a
Town
policy of
manager
the town.
appointment.
Anybody that volunteers for the town through a town manager's appointment or selectman's appointment is mandated to sign the code of conduct, and if the recipient, the appointee does not sign it, it automatically revokes the appointment of that individual.
Second.
Just before we go on, I know Mr. Carrera also wanted to add some points, and I just want to make sure that if there are things that get incorporated into this, that we do it in one motion.
Yep.
Mr. Carrera.
I went through this and I looked at it, and
Bless you.
I'm 100% with Deborah, I'm 100% with Joe. But I do think there should be a form put together, and I just drew something up quick just to get it out there, that it should be something generic as the letter. It should be a letter, not a formal letter with the heading on it, and then you put in it, it'll say I, a blank for their name, of blank committee, has read, understands, agrees, and willfully obeys to act accordingly to whatever these, and that's how it should read. Then you can either put something in there that says failure to accept and obey and this will nullify any appointment process that has taken place.
Now we're talking. That's it.
This is what I want.
All right, so I'll add that to my motion. Gilda, did you get
That's the
all
friendly
that?
emotion to add
I
the sign.
didn't pen it out 100%, but
We can
that's
ask,
where I'm going.
I would
Well, we can
add
ask
to my
town council
motion
to-
that
Do you
an
know why?
appro-
Do you know why I'm saying this?
Yes, you're right.
No, we know exactly why.
Makes easy removal too, even if they do sign it and somebody withstands and it says something derogatory, they're gone. Because
right.
it's
All right, I'm
here.
just trying to, I'm
And
just trying
that's
to
right.
move us, so
Yep.
I would say I will add to my motion, and if you're in agreement, I will add into my motion, and that an appropriate form be created
Yes.
that the applicant reads, signs, and authorizes that if they don't sign it, their appointment is revoked.
That's correct. I second that. And that means they can't even be sworn in on the front
Right.
end.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's managing the clerk's department.
Okay, you
Oh,
approve
that's
that?
just
Okay.
editorial.
Motion, second, we have a friendly amendment that has been accepted by all involved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Anybody opposed? Nope. Okay, so we'll have town council draft that up and provide also, I think we also have to make sure that we add a timeframe, filled out within 30 days or something like that. Of appointment.
To approve the consent agenda.
So-
Second.
So I will move forward on that. One statement, I talked to the members of the St. John's Philharmonica that are involved with the Holy Ghost Society of Azores. They just wanted to invite the board to attend if you're able to. Ms. Pereira. I'm sorry? We'll do that one. I pulled that out, so I'll read that next. But with the procession that will take place for the Holy Ghost Society of Azores, they wanted to invite everybody from the board to join them. So we have motion to approve consent agenda has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, ayes have it. So item E, this one I'm going to read the motion because I think we need a specific motion. I know we have Paul and Newt here with us. If you just want to walk us through what we're doing here and why it's needed. Also, if you can help us understand the reason why it was added to the select board agenda a little bit late. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I did not receive the documents for this ban, for the bond anticipation note, until late Friday, which the agenda packet went out to you. I had confirmation, and I don't know who gave the confirmation to the financial advisor, who is Hilltop Security, but I have a document that said that they confirmed that there was going to be a Board of Selectmen meeting on June 4th, and shame on me, I believed that that meant that this was going to be an item on the agenda already. I don't, like I said, I don't know where that confirmation came from, but when I got the agenda, I then sent an email to Gilda on Thursday after I got the agenda to say that this needed to be on there, and I believe that Gilda had already left. So I went out to speak with Reggie, and I think that was Friday morning. No, I'm sorry. I believe I left a message or I sent an email to Reggie, and I asked her if this could be revised, and she said that she would get back to me. So it was revised. She then said that she spoke with you, Stephen, to say that it could be revised, and that's how it got on the agenda. So please forgive me if this is my error. I don't mean to cause any harm to anyone, but it is a bond anticipation note that has to be signed off on because the funds are going to be coming in to the town's account on June 14th. So they do need signatures, and the documents that you'll be signing tonight, if you do vote on this, has to get back to the bond counsel, Loch Lord, so that they can process all the documents and get those over to the winning bidder. So again, please accept my apology. But what you do have before you is an $11 $5,141,818 bond anticipation note. I do need you to vote on and to sign on the notes. The bond anticipation note has a 5-month term and will mature on November 21st, 2024. This will coincide with the other bans that we have for the town. The projects that these funds relate to are listed on page 1 of the certificate of the document that you have. The principal amount of $11,141,818 and the premium of $35,208.14 will be, as I said, credited to our town's bank account on June 14th. The winning bidder was TD Securities, and the coupon interest rate is at 4.5%, but with the premium, the net interest cost is 3.78 for the 5 months that we will have this term.
Thank you, Ms. Newt. Does anybody have any questions? No questions. The motion is very long. I'll read through the motion, and if anybody would like to say that they make that motion, then that's fine, but I was going to read through this. It's very long. The motion that we have to make is the following. I, the clerk of the Select Board of the Town of Stoughton, Massachusetts, certify that a meeting of the board held June 4th, 2024, of which meeting all members of the board were duly notified and at which a quorum was present. The following notes of votes were unanimously passed, all of which appear upon the official record of the board in my custody. Voted to approve the sale of $11,141,818, which is a 4.5% general obligation bond anticipation note, otherwise known as the notes, of the town dated July 14th, 2024, and payable November 21st, 2024 to TD Securities USA, LLC, as per and accrued, as at par and accrued interest, if any, plus a premium of $35,208.14. Further voted that in connection with the marketing and sale of the notes, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale, a preliminary official statement dated May 22nd, 2024, and a final official statement dated May 30th, 2024, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted. Further voted that the town treasurer and the select board be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver a significant events disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12 in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the notes for the benefit of the holders of the notes from time to time. Further voted that we authorize and direct the town treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures and continuing disclosure procedures in such forms as the town treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if such proceedings are currently in place to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax-exempt status of the notes and to comply with relevant securities laws. Further voted that any certificates or documents related to the notes, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original and of which all shall constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electronic mail in a .pdf file or by other electronic transmission shall be as effective as delivery of a manually executed counterpart signature page to such document. And electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed original signatures for the purpose of the documents and all matters related thereto, having the same legal effect as original signatures. Further voted that each member of the select board, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing vote. I hereby further certify that the votes which were taken at a meeting open to the public, that no vote was taken by secret ballot, that a notice stating the place, date, time, and agenda for the meeting, which agenda included the adoption of the above votes, was filed with the town clerk and copy thereof posted in a manner conspicuously visible to the public at all hours in or on the municipal building, that the office of the town clerk is located, or, if applicable, in accordance with with an alternative method of notice prescribed or approved by the Attorney General as set forth in 940 CMR 29.032B. At least 48 hours, not including Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays, prior to the time of the meeting, and remained so posted at the time of the meeting that no deliberation or decision in connection with the sale of the notes be taken in executive session, all in accordance with General Law, Chapter 30A, subsections 18 through 25, as amended. This is dated June 4th. So would anybody like to make that motion?
So made.
Second.
Okay, so we have Ms. Roberts made the motion, Mr. McCrisky seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Newt, for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
We will have a good night. So next order of business, we'll knock this out pretty quick, is the change of legal counsel for KP Law, PC to Mead, Tellerman, and Costa LLC.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen, by action of this vote, change our legal counsel from KP Law PC to Mead, Tellerman, and Costa LLC, and relinquish KP Law of all cases involving the town of Stoughton.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, so so that is passed unanimously as well. The next item on our agenda is the town manager mid-year review. There's still a couple of reviews that are outstanding, so we're going to move this to our next scheduled meeting. Town manager and I did review his contract earlier today, and this was my failing. I had missed this actually. In his contract, the mid-year review is not a requirement. I think it's still an important thing for us to do because it helps set expectations and make sure that we're all on the same page and in agreement with what ought to happen. But we are not out of compliance with our requirements, which is always a good thing to be. But we'll put this on the agenda for our next meeting, and we'll make sure that we provide the town manager with a mid-year review so he knows where he stands on the items that he has
I
just for the year.
hardly understand anything that you said.
We'll be looking through his contract in a little bit, and I'll show you exactly what I mean.
Okay. You can tell me later.
Yep. Yeah, we'll work through it. So that one we're going to take off the agenda for tonight. We're not going to cover it. And that covers the entirety of our open agenda, open session agenda. So there's an executive session item. There's two items on it. One is an executive session pursuant to Open Meeting Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategic sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and contract negotiations with non-union personnel, town manager. And item B is the approval of executive session minutes, meeting of May 21st, 2024. If I make a finding that discussing these items in an open session would be detrimental to the town's position in negotiation, and therefore I would like to, if anybody has a motion to go into executive session. Someone make a motion to enter executive session? So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion to go into executive session in a second. By roll call vote, Mr. Cheeto?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Carrera?
I will not be attending. I will abstain.
Thank you. Ms. McCrisky?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I'll be entering into executive session, but I will not be taking part in any conversation or vote.
Thank you. And I vote yes as well. So that is 3, you're yours was to, Mr. McCrisky, your vote was not a yes or no, it was abstention in this case?
Well, yeah, I'll be abstaining for any votes.
Okay.
I will not be taking any votes. I will just be going in as a...
Thank you. So the motion to enter executive session passes.
Yeah, I can do that.
We will not be returning to an open session.
Mr. Chairman, no, I'm voting to go into executive session.
Perfect. Okay,
Right.
so then that's,
I said I'm voting to go into executive session, but I will not be taking place in any votes or any discussion.
thank you, Mr. McCrisky. So that is 4 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 abstention. We will not be re-entering open session, and we were going to adjourn from our executive session. So the time is 9:44. Thank you all very much, and have a great night.